Hey everyone, welcome to TechstrongTV. I'm Alan Schimmel, and hello. We hope you had a great day. This is Monday, July 11th. That's 7-Eleven for most of you. Of course, 7-Eleven, I start thinking about craps. I start thinking about Black Hat. For those of you in the security world, cyber, infosec, whatever you call it, August is always kind of summer camp for cyber. Black Hat, Security B-Sides Vegas, of course, DEF CON coming up. I think things kick off August 5th or something like that this year. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be at security camp for in Vegas this year. I think we had enough at RSA. Half the team got COVID, and we're going to skip Black Hat. But I will be there for AWS reInvent, God willing, right after Thanksgiving. And looking forward to maybe visiting the crap tables there. Also, this happens to be episode 341 of TechstrongTV, which when you think about it, that's pretty darn amazing, right? 341 episodes of TechstrongTV, and we're still going strong. We've got a great show for you today. Immediately following my kind of overview here, we're going to launch into today's headlines. Natan Solomon, one of our interns here at Techstrong, will be doing today's news, and hopefully you're liking that new news format. We're going to be making a lot of changes to the TechstrongTV format, actually, and how you're able to interact with us. So stay tuned for that. After the news, it's a lot of RSA today. We're going back to a lot of the interviews that we recorded over. Actually, we streamed them live at RSA, but most of you probably weren't able to catch it. And so we are playing them over the coming days and weeks. So I have a couple of interviews that I did there I wanted to highlight to you. First off, I interviewed the CEO of Teleport, Ed Konetsevoy, and Ed was a great interview. For those of you who don't know, Teleport, I think, plays in one of the most interesting parts of the cloud security space, which is identity access control. And, you know, it offers connectivity without the need for VPNs, authentication, single sign-on, over users, any infrastructure they have. So we're going to talk about how the Teleport platform is consolidating with all kinds of user access protocols, making it the place to go. So check that out. After that, another interview I did over at RSA, and this one is with Eric Skinner. Eric is VP of Market Strategy at Trend Micro. And, you know, Trend Micro recently upgraded or released Trend Micro 1. And that's sort of their let's bring this all together platform, right? Trend Micro has a long history in endpoint security, strong offerings in cloud, edge. They're bringing this all together into one platform called Trend Micro 1. Their partners integrate into it as well. XDR, a bunch of other things. Eric will tell us all about it. I think you'll enjoy hearing about it and check it out. After that, I'm really happy. Our friend Mike Jones, the Haunted Hacker, we've got part one of a 3-part series of his latest Haunted Hacker podcast video. And Mike's guest for this one is Director of Global Intelligence of Picnic Corp. And he's going to be talking, well, I'm not sure of the guest's name other than his title. It seems we have a thing there, but he's a seasoned pen tester, also red teamer and social engineer. His name is Manit. And I'm looking forward to it. Mike's Haunted Hackers are always great. After that, we're going to go back a little bit further than RSA. I want to go back to a interview I did over at KubeCon, Cloud Native Con Europe, which was just a week or two before RSA over in beautiful Valencia, Spain. And I'm speaking with Anish Dar, who's the CEO co-founder of Cortex. And he's going to talk about organizing microservices. So good stuff there. Also, they announced recently a new open source project you want to check out. Watch the video for details. After that, I think we're going to go back to an interview Charlene did. And this interview is with Patty Byers, who's the CTO for Ably, A-B-L-Y. And then that's going to discuss findings from Ably's new State of Edge messaging report. Want to check that one out. And then we have another interview with Charlene. And Charlene interviews Shash Anand, Vice President of Product Strategy for SOTI, S-O-T-I. And this is regarding SOTI's 2022 Sustainability Report, Reduce, Reuse, Rethink, from discard mentality to tech sustainability. Good interview. Charlene did a nice job on that. After that, we are going to go over to the analyst corner with our friend Mitch Ashley. And these are also two interviews Mitchell did at RSA that I think are really great. One is with Artie Rahman, CEO founder of Titanium. And he's going to talk to Mitch. And then we also have Nick Sorensen, who's the CEO of, Wistic, W-H-I-S-T-I-C. And he's also, this, as I mentioned, is from RSA. Good stuff there. And wait, there's more. We have another interview with Mitchell, and this one is with Tony Lauro, who's the Director of Security Technology and Strategy for Akamai. Akamai's had some recent new folks come join the security team there, and Mitch is going to talk to them about that. Akamai puts out a ton of reports every year with some really great information based on their huge bandwidth and traffic and their monitoring of it. After that, we've got two View with Vizards with the one and only Mike Vizard, our Chief Content Officer. Mike interviews Josh Jennings, Chief Engineer for SOS, C-O-O-S, and he's going to talk about why not all code scanning and composition analysis tools are the same. No, they're not. And interested to find out more on that. And then also Mike has CEO James Breer from Swimlane. Swimlane recently announced a $70 million additional funding round, and they're going to use that to advance the world of security automation. That should be a good one. And that's going to wrap it up. It's going to be a great day on TechstrongTV. We're glad you're here. We'll be back in a minute.
Looking for a live conference focused on the tools, technologies, and practices most important to your business? Innotech conferences are live one-day business and technology conferences highlighting the latest in trends for IT leaders, developers, and IT professionals. Each event combines education, innovation, peer-to-peer networking, and the latest technology and business solutions for a diverse IT-focused audience. Innotech conferences occur throughout the year in strategic regional locations, bringing together technology professionals from various industries to learn about the solutions, practices, and tools impacting their day-to-day work and gain insight into what's to come. Presenters at Innotech conferences are selected and curated to ensure each session provides the most up-to-date and relevant information without any hype. Whether you're interested in digital transformation, cybersecurity, cloud, IT leadership, or DevOps, Innotech conferences deliver. 2022 events are scheduled to be held in Austin, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Houston, and Washington, D.C. Innotech conferences are produced by TechStrong Live and powered by TechStrong Group.
Hi, I'm Natan Solomon. Today is July 11th, and here are the headlines. First, Google will pay U.S. app developers $90 million in a settlement over App Store policies. The settlement punishes Google for the anti-competitive restrictions it placed on app makers on its Google Play Store. In a blog post, Google announced that many U.S. app developers who earned revenue through Google Play will be able to receive money from the fund. The deal is aimed at benefiting small app makers. For many years, there has been a struggle between app developers and big corporations regarding the cut companies like Apple and Google take out of their revenue. Under the recent settlement, Google said it would continue a pricing model established last year, which allows U.S. app developers to pay a lower fee of 15% for the first $1 million in revenue. Next, the tech giant Meta Platforms has slashed its hiring plans as it braces for a deep economic downturn. Originally, Meta planned on hiring 10,000 new engineers in 2022, but they've decided to cut hirings by at least 30%. CEO Mark Zuckerberg noted that this might be one of the worst downturns we've seen in recent history. In addition to reducing hirings, the company plans on leaving certain positions unfilled and turning up the heat on performance management to weed out weaker employees. Zuckerberg even went as far as to say that there are probably a bunch of people at the company who shouldn't be. Tech companies across the industry should have been forced to scale back in recent months, and with the world's largest social media company losing half of its market value this year, it's no surprise Meta is bracing for the worst. In other news, a new report commissioned by the Pentagon concluded that the blockchain is not decentralized, is vulnerable to attacks, and is running outdated software. The shocking report uncovered that certain users can potentially have excessive and centralized control over the entire blockchain system. The Pentagon's research arm commissioned Trail of Bits, a security research organization, to investigate the blockchain. It decided to focus on the two leading cryptocurrencies in the global market, Bitcoin and Ethereum. The findings show cause for concern, as it only takes 4 entities to disrupt Bitcoin and 2 for Ethereum. It also found that 60% of all Bitcoin traffic moves through just 3 ISPs, along with outdated and unencrypted software and blockchain protocols. Recently, cryptocurrencies have been in a full meltdown, with billions of dollars being lost by investors. Although the recent downturn has come from a struggling global economy, supply chain problems, and inflation, the Pentagon's findings add yet another layer of uncertainty. In another piece of concerning news, there may be an all-star ransomware gang made up of former Conti and Revel members. The new gang that goes by the name Black Basta has victimized 50 organizations in the US, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada since its formation in April 2022. The ransomware employed by Black Basta is the first of its kind and uses double extortion tactics, according to Cybereason. The gang steals the files of a victim organization and then threatens to publish the stolen files if their demands are not met. The group has allegedly demanded millions of dollars from their victims to keep the stolen data private. As ransomware gangs such as Black Basta continue to rise, employing a zero-trust architecture is imperative to preventing these types of attacks. It's also been found that ransomware gangs take advantage of vulnerabilities in outdated software items, making it extremely important to keep all system patches up to date. Next, Samsung is working closely with Google and Microsoft to prevent Pegasus-like cyber attacks. With a large number of state-level cyber attacks being launched, the 3 tech giants will work to create preventative measures. Although security measures are in place that prevent phishing attacks, highly sophisticated spyware tools can break into devices without the victim even pressing a button. Such possibilities have even forced Apple to introduce a lockdown mode, which can prevent targeted cyber attacks. It's unclear whether Samsung plans on introducing a lockdown mode, but it is working on various biometric authenticators that could replace the passwords that we've grown accustomed to. On Digital CXO, we have an article that analyzes AnyDesk's 2022 remote work report. The report comes in the wake of Elon Musk's decision to stop offering remote work to his employees, along with critiques of the work ethic of those who operate away from the office. The findings show how remote and hybrid work has greatly benefited employees and how enterprises are also finding it to be advantageous. However, the widespread move to remote and hybrid work has also prevented cybersecurity and virtual efficiency challenges. The article weighs the benefits and the drawbacks, and it draws conclusions on what companies need to do to successfully offer remote work going forward. On Security Boulevard, we have an article covering Normalize, a company emerging to simplify cloud data security. Emerging from stealth with an agentless platform, Normalize uses graph technology to enable IT teams to discover data in the cloud, classify it, and identify likely attack paths for cybercriminals. Since raising $22.2 million in Series A funding, Normalize's CEO, Amer Deba, said the goal is to simplify cybersecurity teams' understanding of where sensitive data is, allowing them to better protect it. Finally, on Container Journal, we have an article talking about Apiro extending its container security platform to runtime environments. This capability provides developers with a better ability to remediate vulnerabilities before apps are deployed for production. The platform extension will also enable developers of container-based apps to understand how certain risks impact the security of the code they are developing. And that's today's headlines.
This is TechstrongTV.
Hey everyone, we're back here live at RSA Conference. We're really happy to be streaming to you here from the Broadcast Alley location in Moscone West. A lot of the action's over in Moscone North and South. though there are some keynotes and a bunch of sessions here. Really happy to be here. My next guest is Ed Consovoy. Ed is with Teleport, right?
That's right.
EV Consovoy. And we're going to ask Ev to talk a little bit about himself. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit about Teleport.
Sure.
Tell us, Ev, who's Teleport? What do you guys do?
So Teleport is a company based in Oakland, California, but we are a remote first company. And we provide the easiest and most secure way to access computing infrastructure. So what this means is if you're an engineer and you need to access Linux servers via SSH, Windows machines via RDP, Kubernetes clusters, Grafana dashboards, numerous databases. So Teleport gives you the easiest way to get access to all of these resources, no matter where they are in the world.
Excellent. So the teleporting in.
Absolutely. I also think it's like a lot of people don't think too much about the meaning of word access, because there's like this network access, then there's kind of physical access, there are all kinds of access. So just to clarify, when I say that we provide access to your computing infrastructure, that includes secure connectivity, so you don't need VPN anymore.
Right.
And people here like to bash VPNs a lot.
VPN.
So you don't need VPN anymore. So we connect you securely to anything you need. Even if it's actually something like in the real world, like flying around like a drone or an MRI machine, not just servers. The second thing we do is authentication. So you get single sign-on with your favorite IDM. The third thing of access, the third pillar, is authorization. So Teleport becomes your single source of truth. Like if you're an intern, what are you allowed to do? Like with Kubernetes, with servers, with dashboards, with applications, with databases. And the final one, obviously, the audit, real-time visibility into what's happening, as well as historical evidence of who did what, who's responsible. So that's what we do. Basically, connectivity, authentication, authorization, audit for everything you have.
Excellent. So, company's based in Oakland. How long? Teleport's been around how long now?
So Teleport product, so like we have open source roots. So we started existing as a repository on GitHub. So for a while, there was not a commercial product. So it was an internal thing. We built it for ourselves. And then so we started marketing and selling it around 2018.
Excellent. And you guys recently, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Ev, but didn't you recently announce a round of funding?
Yes, we have. Like internally, there was a lot of excitement at Teleport because we just recently closed 110 million Series C round, led by Bessemer Venture Partners.
Great.
And so existing investors obviously followed. And we also brought Insight Venture Partners as a significant.
Insight Partners.
Yep. We just felt that at the scale that we're operating, it's good to have
that kind of
venture partners on both coasts of the country.
Well, Insight's global too, right? I mean, they're all over. And look, at that round, you probably had sort of like what we call a unicorn valuation, right?
Yeah, we were valued at over $1 billion, 1.1 billion. Yeah.
Good.
But there was a lot of jokes in the office about that.
Well, there always is. But you know what? My father-in-law, rest his soul, used to say, rich or poor, it's nice to have money. And a $100 million round and $1 billion valuation, you could joke all you want. It's still a nice thing to have.
Those are nice round numbers. We like it. Yeah.
Excellent. So you guys also released, so you started as open source and obviously, have a commercial, there's still open source, but you have the commercial product. You released a new version of product recently?
Yeah, it wasn't. So the interesting thing, if you have an open source product, which means that people come and download, so you have to have versions as opposed to something like SaaS that's continuously updated. So Teleport is both. So you could come to us and we could sell you a commercial edition at the Teleport Enterprise that you can download and run on your own infrastructure. But we also have a SaaS offering where we will do this for you. And the reason why SaaS is becoming more popular, because most companies, they do computing globally. So you have data centers in different countries. So when one of your engineers or your automation, like your CI/CD pipeline needs to establish secure connection somewhere, like you need to optimize latency, you need to make sure that you're doing it in the most optimal way. That's a lot of work, and this is what our SaaS product does for you automatically. So it does smart routing on all of these connections. It's almost like your own private like CDN for access, so to speak. So yeah, we just recently launched Teleport 9. And the one exciting capability in Teleport 9 is machine ID.
Okay,
you want to know what
very
machine
cool.
ID is about, Alan?
Well, yes, of course I do have. What is machine identity
So the
about?
one thing that we were always deeply unhappy about with security and access in general is how siloed it is.
Yeah.
You have one like specific solution for accessing databases, another solution for accessing your network equipment, another solution for accessing servers, and so on and so forth. So our Teleport platform consolidates all of these protocols, so you get access to everything at once. But another source of this siloing is like one silo would be humans accessing computers, machines, and another one machines talking to machines. And we believe that they all need to be consolidated. So the industry here at RSA, we all agree that identity is a very good idea. And Teleport 9 gives identities to machines.
Yeah.
And it's exact same source of policy also, that identity for humans. So with Teleport 9, you could actually define, like, here's my policy. This is who or what is allowed to access certain resources and under what circumstances. Having I'm not sure if anyone else is capable of doing it, but having a single source of truth, who or what can access specific data, is hugely important. So that's what we launched in Teleport 9, along with other features. And this is what's getting picked up by our existing customers. It's a very popular
Sure. I love
solution.
it.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Ev. You know what? I think we did okay. We knocked off that checklist. Let's talk a little bit about you. What are you doing at Teleport these days?
Well, I happen to be CEO of Teleport. So I co-founded this company with a couple of friends.
And it was really, I mean, the whole open source grew out of you saw a need for something that wasn't there.
Yes. So the story of Teleport was part like I want to say unusual, but in Silicon Valley, nothing is unusual. Exactly.
No, it's actually very usual.
So we're kind of similar to Slack story. So we started the company to do globally distributed software deployments. So if you could imagine like a typical computing environment that consists of, multiple databases and Grafana dashboard and CI/CD pipeline and a Kubernetes cluster and Linux boxes and like this.
I started a company to do a similar thing in 1999.
I'm seeing sparks in your eyes.
Distributed applications. It then became a security company. But
you see, yeah. So if you have thousands of sites all over the world where you need to do these deployments, that's what our original technology was for.
Yep.
Like we thought about putting our stuff into things like F-35 jet fighters in the Air Force, for example. So when you have all of these secure platforms globally distributed, how do you synchronize software deployment? Like that's how we started. That was our initial product.
Got it.
And obviously security and access and audits and the distributed nature of it. So we couldn't afford to have like a single database that said, these are all the users. That wouldn't work. So that's where Teleport came out of. And because of these requirements that we had all of these sites and we had things that fly in the air and move around, not just servers. So the system had to be built in a way that's immune to human error. Because we believe that every vulnerability, every attack starts with a human making an accidental mistake.
Yep.
And almost always that mistake has something to do with the secret, with the password, with the private key material. So for this reason, Teleport is designed to be a completely secretless system, just to eliminate any possibility of human errors. It's basically biometric TPMs on your laptops, HSM on servers, and certificates everywhere that expire automatically. You could do single-use certificates and so on and so forth. So, but we internally didn't think that it would be a product.
Well, no.
Simply because it felt too radical. Like there are no passwords, there's like no private keys. Because everyone for SSH, the private key and the key rotation, it's a big deal. But people noticed that, as I said, it was sitting on GitHub. And I do remember having it was probably first conversation with someone who uses Teleport. And they suddenly asked, can I pay you guys?
Right?
And that's how we had to come up with pricing on the fly. Yeah, it was like 3 years ago, but still. Fantastic. Anyway, that's the story of Teleport. It's a side project turned into a huge success.
Sometimes those are the best ones.
Yeah.
Ev, thanks for coming on. It's a pleasure to see you
Always
again.
fun.
Check out Teleport. We're live here at RSA Conference. We're going to be right back in a moment.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
This is TechstrongTV.
Hey everyone, we're back here live at RSA Conference, coming at you, streaming to Europe and Asia and South America and Africa and the rest of the US. For those of you who can't be here at RSA, it's almost I would say it's as close a return to normalcy as I've seen.
Unexpected.
Yes, yeah. Unexpected's a good word for it. I've heard numbers of 20 to 25,000 people here, which is still, to be fair, almost half of what it was in 2019.
But it's really busy.
But it's a lot of people. Mm-hmm. It's a lot. I'm almost glad that we're in Moscone West, which is probably a little less crowded than North and South.
Yeah.
We're here in our broadcast studio because it gets crowded out there.
It's very crowded.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gentleman here who's going along with me agreeing is Eric Skinner, right? Eric's with Trend Micro. And welcome to TechstrongTV, Eric.
It's a pleasure to chat with you.
Pleasure to have you here. So, Eric, I mean, let's continue this RSA thing.
Yeah.
You've been here before.
I have many times, yeah.
What's your impression?
The energy level is still high. Cybersecurity continues to be a high priority. Luckily, during the pandemic, cybersecurity remains super important for companies.
Yeah.
And so we still see a lot of customers here, a lot of prospects here who are still facing big challenges and looking for solutions. It's there's high energy.
I think
and a lot of hype too.
Luckily for security vendors, I don't know if the people out there are so lucky, right, that we've had the security issues we've had. With the pandemic, we've had almost, and it's would be a good book. I haven't seen a good book or article on this, but security, pandemic-related security issues, right? It seems like, what's the poster child for security during the pandemic? Software supply chain?
Well,
Zero trust?
Certainly the huge shift in where people are working created big visibility challenges.
Yes.
So some of the zero trust stuff has obviously kicked into high gear, but in general, IT security needing better awareness of what's going on because they can't just focus on the people in the office anymore. I mean, of course, even before people were traveling and everything, but suddenly tons of people are out of the building. So
it's work from anywhere. It's work from anywhere.
Yeah.
So Eric, and it's fueling, as we said, and so it's been a good time at RSA.
Yeah.
Let's talk Trend Micro though, right? So Trend Micro, look, if you're like me, you've been in security a while. Trend's one of the players, always has been, right?
Yeah.
And
30 years.
Years and years. And originally it was more, back then it was AV and then endpoint security. But we've seen over the last few years, Trend is kind of a full-featured security platform, if you will, right? Cloud, endpoint, identity access, threat management, all network. Of the network, all of the players. And it really, I guess you formalized that whole platform thing as Trend Micro One, right?
That's right. We pulled things together into something new that we call Trend Micro One, which is really a unified cybersecurity platform, pulling together the capabilities of the various components that Trend Micro has had, in some cases for a long time, in some cases for a more recent amount of time. And that really started with the initiatives around XDR a few years ago, we were one of the very first companies to embrace and innovate with XDR because we saw the value of connecting the dots between these platforms. The threats are moving faster. The attackers are moving faster. We see this in ransomware cases now where, instead of taking days or weeks, they're taking hours, minutes. So XDR's ability to detect threats that are moving in subtle ways across the organization, that was the first step of tying together our platform. And then we saw the potential to do even more.
But wait, there's more, right? Yeah. What's interesting as I sit here talking to you, thinking about it, Eric, is first of all, security today isn't what security was 25 years ago when I started, right?
No.
There was network security, there was endpoint security. Now, there's so many facets, attack surfaces, threat intel, threat response, cloud, DevSecOps. I mean, there's a lot of different elements to today. There's at best, a handful of companies who can pull all of these disparate parts together into one platform, if you will.
That's right.
Like a Gen Micro one. Because it really means it's to get your arms around this.
Yeah, a lot of organizations are struggling, first of all, to keep up with the various detections and the various alerts that come up in
every
platforms.
Day.
But we've also got this attacker behavior where they're working really hard to hide, and they're doing subtle things that don't necessarily trigger detections or alerts in the individual silos. And so one of the things that XDR brought to the table, and now we see XDR all over this trade show this year, is that XDR is looking for those subtle clues and correlating them across the environment, really taking what was a terrific solution in EDR and expanding EDR to cover a broader range of things, not just the endpoint.
Yep.
So XDR was that first step to really help organizations find the attackers in a way that the individual solutions were not able to do. And organizations have to do this faster because the attackers are moving faster.
No doubt.
Yeah.
The attackers move fast. I mean, I don't want to say they're smarter, but they're certainly much better organized.
They're terrifically well funded, and they are organized, and they're actually specialized. We see attacker groups that focus on initial entry, and then each stage of the attack has groups of attackers that you can hire and you can get tech support from
together,
them
right?
Exactly.
This group does this to do their thing, but then the byproduct they sell out the back door, right? To the next group that works with that stuff. It's a whole ecosystem.
And it's a SaaS platform in a lot of cases. And they know that the faster they execute, the more likely they are to get the payoff.
The bigger the fish.
So they're hiding and they're moving fast, and it's up to security vendors like us and security teams in our customers to detect as rapidly as possible. And so the old ways don't work.
Yep. Yeah. Let's jump into this Gen Micro.
The next part. Okay. So we had the power of XDR already helping our customers, and we saw the ability that was bringing to our customers, and then layering on top of that managed detection and response, which is so critical for so many organizations. But we realized that there were still gaps in terms of customers' security coverage, their visibility. For example, we talked to our incident response teams, and I asked them, hey, where are these serious attacks originating? Not what country are they originating, but what is the first step in the attack? And they said, actually, it's pretty simple. 50% of the attacks start with phishing, and the other 50% start with unknown, unmanaged, or misconfigured internet-facing assets. And we said to ourselves, well, that's pretty interesting, because at the time when we were having these conversations 2 years ago, we didn't help customers identify those things. So what we've done is we've extended this platform, and we've built this Trend Micro One platform that not only does XDR, but does attack surface management. And we really break that up into 3 stages. First of all, discovering your attack surface. What do you have? And then secondly, assessing the risk to really understand, okay, well, where are the problems? And really synthesizing all the information that's available to us from our own stack, but also third-party integrations, to then help the customer with the third stage, which is mitigating the risk. You can't fix everything. So what are the 3 most important things you have to do today?
Yep.
Right? And the power of that is tremendous with respect to getting the customer to focus on the most important things.
Love it. Now,
Yeah.
nothing in security is ever done.
No.
What's next?
Oh man, come on. We just shipped this thing 2 months ago.
Well, yeah, I know, but
I think that there's a ton of enrichment that still happens in this concept of attack surface risk management. The job is not done, right? So how can we improve discovery? How can we improve that risk assessment? There's a ton of customer interest in how we're doing this risk assessment and helping them understand how their security posture and the overall health of their environment is improving or decreasing over time, and why. What are we seeing there? And we're continuing to work with the thousands of preview customers who are using this platform on tuning that, helping them get the most value out of it. And then there's the automation capabilities that come with that remediation. And we're not going to say that everything is going to get automated. That's unrealistic. But there are certain things that can be automated, and we're taking bites out of that already. And we're going to continue to do more ourselves and with SOAR partner integrations.
That was a new word, SOAR. Let's talk about that.
Security orchestration automation.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
is SOAR part of the Trend Micro platform?
It's
or are you partnering with SOAR providers?
We have a diverse customer base. So we have small organizations and large organizations using the product. So one of the big transformations for Trend in the last year is we've really opened up interconnectedness with the ecosystem and recognizing, for example, that we can get a lot of visibility by plugging into partners like Tenable and Qualys or Active Directory or Okta, or a wave of different companies that are gradually getting integrated with. But also on the automation side, especially if you're a larger organization, you're probably already using a SOAR platform. So we are integrating with third-party platforms, and then we're providing some basic capabilities native to our own platform, so the smaller customers get some of that built-in functionality. And we're not telling them, oh, ours is better, because the reality is for those larger customers, those pure play SOAR products are going to be better for them.
Absolutely. Hey, Eric, this has been pretty dense information in here. We've packed a lot into a little bit of time. If you don't mind, we'll put Trend Micro 1 to the side a second.
Sure.
What else beyond one? I mean, Trend Micro is a many tentacled kind of thing now. What else do you see coming down?
Well, one of the interesting areas that you brought up already is Zero Trust, which is not a product per se from anybody, but it's a philosophy that's really important and growing in popularity for good reason. And so think of that as sort of a horizontal slice through things that Trend is doing. And in fact, the reason we built the risk assessment functionality in Trend Micro 1 started with Zero Trust projects at Trend, where we said, well, okay, a lot of these vendors that are doing Zero Trust today, they're really doing network plumbing. They're kind of like, okay, instead of wide open VPN, we're going to do point-to-point network connectivity, and we're going to do segmentation. And that's important. But one of the basic concepts of Zero Trust is that you need to continuously assess the health of devices and identities, because you're trying to decide whether to continue trusting them, right? The definition, never trust, always verify. So that always verify is a thing that we've noticed many vendors have skipped. And we've taken it incredibly to heart, this concept of continuous assessment. And so one of the things the Trend Micro 1 engine is able to do is provide really sophisticated assessment of identity health and device health. And that's going to power any kind of zero trust solution that the customers use.
initiative.
So we feel that zero trust is an important area. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of confusion.
There's certainly a lot of hype this year at RSA about it.
Well, one of the things we saw is tons of vendors basically said, "Oh yeah, zero trust is important." Okay, everything we already built for the last 20 years
Is
that's
zero trust.
and that's not really.
But that's
helpful.
typical of this industry,
It's not really
quite frankly. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always some new buzzword that everyone gathers around. You know what we didn't tell people, though? They want to find out more about Trend Micro one. Where are they going?
They're definitely going to trendmicro.com, and they will find it all there.
It's right on the front page.
Oh, yeah.
Cool, man.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks for being with us here at RSA
pleasure.
this year. We're going to take a break. It's my pleasure. We are live, streaming live at from Moscone West, Broadcast Alley. What is it? It's about almost quarter after 10 here in the morning. We got a full day of broadcasting. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
Welcome to the Haunted Hacker podcast episode. What we say, volume 2.0 for June. This is our second. Second among many, because I have another one tonight right after this. But tonight is kind of cool. We have Manit, and I'll allow him to introduce himself. He's from the UK, and I'm super shocked that we haven't ran into each other before, but this is a great opportunity for me. So we'll start with a little bit of news. Things are looking good on the speaking front and the charity front. The nonprofit that we have going, the Hacker for Vets, is really going well. This glorious beard will get shaved off in November if we hit $300,000. So go donate if you want to see this chopped off. Other than that, not a whole lot of huge news in the cyber arena. I know our American listeners are probably dealing with the blowback from the recent decision on Roe versus Wade today, which I think is a very sad day. Definitely a sad day for the U.S. And our government. I think it's wrong. But we all know my opinion on that. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Manit. Manit, please share who you are and your journey into cyber.
So hey everyone, I'm Manit Saib. I'm a red teamer and a social engineer. My background is the former red team lead for the UK Central Bank, where I use defensive techniques to protect the UK's payment and gold systems. I'm now the director of global intelligence at Picnic Security, a company looking to address the issue of social engineering attacks. So watch this space. I have a whole list of certifications. I won't get into all of them, but I'm certified by the UK's Cyber Security Centre, as well as Her Majesty's CESG check scheme. And I hold private certifications, including OSCP and CREST. I've spoken at a number of events, including central banking. So my background is, financial sector as well. So spoken at a number of central banking conferences and also universities. I was shortlisted for Cyber Personality of the Year last year, 2021, by Cybersecurity Awards, and nominated Best Security Team in Europe in 2019 by SC Awards. That's me in a nutshell.
That's a very large nutshell, actually. You brought up some things that we'll definitely touch on. The CREST certification and all that stuff. I started a company while I was over in the UK. It was a UK company. And one of the hurdles that all UK red team companies have to go through is CREST, if you want to make money, for sure. So we'll get into that. So tell me a little bit about your experience and what you enjoy about Red Team, and do you think it's important to know both sides, Red Team, Blue Team? Just give me your outlook on Red Team and why that really attracted you to that practice.
Yeah, so I think I enjoy breaking stuff. So like going and towards my background, I came from development. So I was developing the IBM toolset back in the day. Then was like, hey, what do I do with this skill set? And I was like, I enjoy breaking things. Let me go into the offensive security realm. And exactly, you've hit the nail on the head. You need to know both sides. So I came in quite naive, looking to break things. And I was like, well, actually, how do I enhance that? And I need to learn how technology is fundamentally built, and also the Blue Team side, so that, I can go and bypass detections. So having that wealth of knowledge from both the attacker and defensive perspective is valuable.
Yeah, super valuable. One of the things that I do for new analysts, because I manage an MDR now, what I do for new analysts is give them the access to The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I live by that. I live by that. That's my Bible. And it should be
know your enemy. You must become your enemy, right? And that kind of sums up what we do as red teamers, because when we go out and on a tangent here, but when we go out and we speak to stakeholders and they're like, oh my God, you're going to break my stuff. And, blah, and like, we're the good guys here. Like, we're trying to help you before the real bad guys come in and extort you for however much amount. So definitely agree. Art of War, man. Air horns for that.
Yeah. I love the soundboard. I got to get one.
Yeah.
I find it invaluable, not just in cybersecurity, but life in general. Just understanding people and understanding, maybe adversaries in business or competition. It's one of those things that I think you can relate to pretty much any part of your life. So I started out on Blue Teams after I left the military. I helped build SOCs. At the same time, I was doing hacking and malware creation and just doing my own thing, which kind of led me down a dark hole and ended up getting into some trouble. But I think as we get older, we start seeing like the balance, right? And you start seeing where that talent needs to be redirected. And I think in our industry, a lot of kids and a lot of young people are coming in with this idea of, getting into cybersecurity. But when you ask them what they want to be, what role they want to take, what is the first answer you always get, man?
How do I hack my friends, my girlfriend, Facebook or Instagram? I hear it so many times. To tell you the truth, I've even had investigators and lawyers contact me and said, hey, and this is an example I put out there. Hey, this client of mine has sent nudes to their ex and we want the nudes deleted. Can you go and hack the guy and make sure he's removed it? I'm like, seriously, like that's what we protect, like national security, right? And our economy at a scale. And then you get people saying, can you hack Facebook or Instagram? And they're like, guys, no, it's not happening.
Yeah, and I blame most of that on the media. I think that the way that the media portrays, hackers and pen testers is way out of control. They paint it to be this rock star image, the excitement, money, and fast cars. When in reality, most of us are sitting behind a desk. Most of us are probably not the rock star type and just doing a 9-to-5 job. And I think a lot of people get misinformed or maybe misguided by the media.
It's also a terminology issue, right?
Oh, huge.
So we don't call bank robbers like financial advisors. You know what I mean? So like they call everybody a hacker. No, the people that are doing this illegally are criminals. Right. They are criminals. So stop calling them advisors or hackers or whatever. No other industry did they do that.
Right. And another thing too is what I've experienced is the amount of, I want to call it cyber stalking on LinkedIn by malicious people, right? So I had somebody from the Pakistani ISI contact from you last year trying to get me to break into somebody's cryptocurrency wallet and then try to have me hack into a bank. And I'm like, at what point do you look at my LinkedIn profile and go, I want to see if this guy will break the law for me?
Yeah.
You know, I just get so confused with that.
It's insane. Like the people just approach you for this stuff. I haven't had that on LinkedIn. I've had it on other sources, but OSINT on LinkedIn, I think that's a key point, right? A lot of information is exposed on LinkedIn, and that is seeding the attackers to conduct these attacks.
Yeah, and one of the things that I practice on LinkedIn, if you look at my profile, there's a lot of things that I redacted with ASCII characters.
You might as well not even had a LinkedIn. I had a look at it. I was like, there's a black bars everywhere. Like, what emoji was that?
But see, this is also one of the things that I bring up for new people coming into the industry. We sit here and preach like, oh, but you have to network and you have to get on LinkedIn and Twitter and get like, start knowing, which I agree, like we have to do this. But at the same time, we are literally going against everything that we say not to do. Like,
well, in a safe way,
what you put out there. Well, in a safe way.
In a safe way. I'm not going to disclose, specific operations in the military or specific technology I used, in intelligence. And I'm definitely not going to expose like names of companies, right? So there might be a few on my LinkedIn profile that I have an actual name of a company, but the rest is redacted because, LinkedIn makes OSINT very, very easy.
Well,
and almost to a scary point. And, I just, I try to tell people, be careful what you share because you never know what's going to be used against you. Plus, with the industry, I love our industry and it's full of great people, but there are people out there that wish people harm and wouldn't think twice about picking up a phone and calling your company. So I try to avoid that type of situation. And also, in the positions we're in, man, we're targets anyways. And so
that's what I was going to say. Like, especially when I use my genuine name, I know other people don't. And Kim, what you said, like we're practicing what we preach, but it might look like we don't do that. And it all comes down to OPSEC, so your operational security. What is it that you're sharing in your public profile under your legit name? And everything else, if you want to keep family or everything at an arm's length, then you have a certain persona and you attach that persona to them. I've been very careful and, maybe I'll challenge people to go there and do some OSINT on me. I've tried to remove everything. If you find something, let me know. I try to split out that persona because we are saying to people, watch what you put out there. And then it may be perceived that we're not being as careful, but we are. And we're making sure our OPSEC is intact.
Right. And I think OPSEC is like huge. And, I'm guilty of it too. Sometimes I'll fail on OPSEC just because I get too complacent. And I think complacency in our industry and in security is the biggest killer. So if you're new to the industry and you're listening to this, try to stay, vigilant on your OPSEC. Nobody's going to be perfect, but do your best. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's part of it. Like we're telling people to network, they're new to the industry. They don't quite understand what that means. And so for me, it's hard for me. Like I don't like seeing people post about their children because I know that people can use that against like, not like bad actors, right? Like can come and say, people don't even realize like, and again, it's, what can they do with that? And hopefully nothing happens. But if you're newer to the industry, and that's where I think it's hard to get that balance. And we need to work on teaching that a little bit better.
Yeah, I try to include that in all of my talks as well. So I did a talk for the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And one of the things I try to explain to them is the kids that have your equipment, there are ways to track those kids just by that equipment and what they do with that equipment. Photos, exit data, all that good stuff. There's so many ways to track kids. And I'm sure that, you've been through that as well. But I think it's important not only to share that within the industry, but when we go out and give talks to different places, always include that if you're a speaker, because it's super important. Because you'd be amazed how many people don't really know what's possible when it comes to tracking somebody down. So tell me about your social engineering. I know that's one of your hotspots. So tell me what.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good segue, right? Because we're talking about OT profiles. So yeah, I mean, as a former red team lead, and I've now come to a company. It's a startup specializing in social engineering, how we provide protection at an enterprise scale. And segue on from what you were saying about individuals, the types of engagements I do name dump social engineering attacks and how I leverage humans into a product. But the key indicators are family, what you've picked up. So what is it that people are, should I link that? Or a simple one, right, is going on Facebook and seeing who liked a specific post, right? From those likes, you can probably see a family member. That family member will have an open profile. There's guaranteed one person that has that. Then reverse searching on that surname and seeing, right, who are the other family members? And you're going to find photos. I found from a photo, I found a website, and that website included medical details about one of the family members. Right. So then you can stage a catfishing profile and saying, hey, I have the same thing with my child. Can you please help? And humans are naturally inclined when people ask for help to help. Right. So I'm building that trust. I've found their phone number already. That's, public knowledge. If you want to find it, I can aid that catfishing profile with a vishing attack and actually phone them and say, hey, what do you think of this? Blah, blah, blah. Gain that trust. Then bang, I can send them malware, check this document. Is this cool? And get in from that perspective. So social engineering is such a big attack vector and it's difficult to remediate because people's information is so public, and even in enterprise organizations, right? They have individuals that are sharing so much. And I've heard from people outside the UK that they can laterally move from personal assets back into a corporate network because they're waiting for that day they're going to plug their device into the corporate network and bang, the attacker's on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do think that now we're talking about metaverse Web3. That is going to be a fundamental attack vector to compromise wallets, compromise accounts, avatars, because what we're seeing at the moment where this technology is still being built, there's not enough security experts that have been assigned to do testing, assurance testing on these technologies. So what are actors going to do? What are scammers going to do? Bang, social engineering. The amount of Instagram accounts that are being compromised at the moment, and they've got automated scripts, the attackers, to be like, as soon as I compromise this account, I'm going to change the MFA. I'm going to, log out from the legit person's asset. I've changed the password, changed MFA. How are they going to verify it?
Yep. And it's funny you bring that up because just recently, a good friend of mine, Tom Ryan, also a security researcher, we've been friends for forever. I got a message on Instagram saying, "Hey, Mike, this is my new contact information. Can you give me a call? Give me your email address. I've lost all my contacts." So I looked at it and I thought, that's kind of strange because me and Tom are like really close friends, like family. So I pick up the phone and call him. I'm like, "Hey, man, I think someone jacked your Instagram." And he was like, "Yeah, but I'm trying to track him down." So we played this game back and forth with this attacker.
I'm going to give him abuse over that because I know Tom as well. He's getting abuse from me.
So he and I played this game with the attacker, and it was hilarious. I mean, we narrowed it down to where this guy was at, and it's the same scheme, same thing you said. He goes into the account, he got in, disabled 2FA, and then took over the account and locked Tom out. But he made a huge mistake by contacting me because immediately I pick up the phone. So, I mean, there are really good social engineers out there, but a lot of them, they don't have to be very advanced because of the fact that people are so gullible. And social engineering doesn't have to be direct person to person. It can also be like my proof of concept with the Android malware, right? Throwing it up on AWS and advertising a free game on Reddit. Next thing you know, they download it and bam, you have 4,000 phones. But that's the kind of thing that's happening. But people only see like the visual part of it. They don't see, how the actors plan, how you can get from one person on social media and build a picture of the entire network. So Tom Ryan also did another project called Robin Sage, where he created a person, this female, and befriended a ton of people. And the amount of data that he got from that operation was insane. We're talking like military officials, government officials, just a slew of people. So, I mean, social engineering, it happens every day. It happens on the phone. It happens on TV. It happens on advertising, on adverts. There's just a ton of it. And I like that your interest, like your special interest, is social engineering, because I think if there was a way to eliminate most of that, we would have a different threatscape.
Yeah, and it's such a difficult problem to solve at the moment, because you've rightly said people are so gullible. So you can mature them up until a point, and if you look at enterprise organizations, they have a lot of cybersecurity awareness. But what about like my grandma, my granddad? Like, who's training them? They're going to click on things. They're going to get their bank accounts taken. Like, it's such a difficult problem, and I think there's a lot to be seen now in the prevention technologies coming forward, and I'm seeing a lot of other companies in this space. It's not just Picnic, who now I work for. A lot of other companies are coming to this space.
Yeah, for sure. And when you look at that social engineering, I had an incident in London that was almost like an accidental social engineering experiment. I was going out to Vauxhall to meet with the London Met Police in their Vauxhall location, and GHCQ is almost catty corner to where London Met Police is. So I see this big building, barbed wires, and the guard shack, and I'm thinking, okay, that must be the London Met. So I walk in the gate, guards come up to me, and I'm like, yeah, I have a meeting with an officer in 10 minutes. I'm not really sure where I'm going. They were ready to move me into the building. And I said, this is London Met Police, right? And they're like, oh no, this is JCQ. London Met's down the street. But at that point, they were willing to take me into the building. So, I mean, it happens all the time. And sometimes it's not intentional, but there are gaps. With companies, they train people on phishing. They train people on vulnerability management and identification. But I don't think within most of the industry and most companies, they focus enough on social engineering aspects. Like people calling up to get a job, and they hear the job description, get all the details of the systems, even go for an interview just to get the details they want to attack that company.
Yeah, and you can find that in some red team engagements. That's literally one of the ways to get information. We call it profiling. So understanding the target, and you can do that. You can go on site, phone them up, and phone up. I've got a plane going on, but you can phone up different operators. So like you phone up once, get a little bit of information. Cool, thank you. Phone up again, same place. You're going to be a different operator. Say, oh, I've got this bit of information, or what about this? And they'll give you more and more. And I had this with Apple, not trying to plug Apple in any way, but someone stole my wallet, took my card to buy some new phones, and I phoned them up because my bank called me, and I was like, what is going on? It's my card, cancel it. And they're like, no, we can't, because it's on a different email address. I was like, this is unbelievable. So anyways, social engineered my way, found the person's email address, phoned the next operator, found their phone number, next operator found their address. Long story short, went to the house, took my wallet.
Nice.
That's pretty awesome. I had a incident not too long ago. A friend of mine, John Lehman, sent me a gift card as a donation to all the stuff that we're doing, kind of like a gift. When I got the gift card, it hadn't been opened, but when I went to go activate it, it said it had already been activated and it was empty. So I was able to track back who logged into it, who they were, their location, and the guy actually went in and created an account to activate it himself with his own legit home address and phone number. So I went on to Google Maps. I found his house. I took a photo of his house, address, and I went on to social media. I found him. I sent him a message. I said, hey, look, I know your game. I've got a card that you stole, and I just want you to know that all this data is being turned over to law enforcement. And all of a sudden, mysteriously, all of his profiles shut down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's possible to get this information back and to figure it out if you know the right avenues.
Yeah, it's an OPSEC fail on their part, right? And similar thing online is someone's Instagram got compromised, and the phishing page, the phishing website, the attacker was, low-level sophistication. They didn't do any OPSEC, and on their when you go into their website and you look onto like the web access portal, so /admin. They stuck their name there for some reason and an image of like their hacker tag. And I was like, what an idiot. So I Googled that. Yeah.
They're not smart. Criminals are not always smart. That's the problem.
So Googled that, found the guy, did some OSINT, found where he lived, found his IP, and found his legit profile, and his dating profile was up there. And I contacted him. I was like, hey, like, if you don't give the account back in 24 hours, I'm exposing this whole thing. And
Did you get it up? Did you? Oh, yeah, you got it back.
Yeah, got it back.
Nice. Yeah, Tom didn't get his back. He had to open a new one. So I'm sure he's listening right now and he hates what I'm saying about this, but
fail.
Nice.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond, CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and Media Ops CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and TechStrong.tv.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, back here live in Valencia at KubeCon Cloud Native Con, continuing our day one coverage here at KubeCon. My guest right now is Anish Dar. Anish is the CEO, co-founder of Cortex.
Yep.
And like me, he's come a long way here to Valencia, but having a great time in this beautiful city. Anish, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for coming down here with us. So Anish, I think we need to, first of all, look, everyone watching this live right now is not here.
Yeah.
Almost by definition, right?
Absolutely.
So we should talk a little bit about what's going on here before we even jump into Cortex.
Makes sense.
I've attended a bunch of KubeCons over the years.
Yeah.
This one kind of feels like the old ones, right?
Yeah.
There's a buzz. There's a critical mass of people.
Yeah, it's nice to see you in person.
Yeah, well, it really is. I don't know if you got to the one we did in LA.
No, I didn't know.
There was like that brief window where things opened up a bit.
And
the LA one was nice, but it was sparse in terms of people.
Definitely. You can feel the excitement here.
Yeah, no doubt. So for those who are at home, I wish you were here. There is the virtual event though that's paralleling this, and you can do that. But Anish, let's talk a little Cortex. For people not familiar with the company, why don't you give them a...
Absolutely. So Cortex basically helps engineering teams understand and improve their microservices. So we catalog all your services and integrate with all of the tooling in your company. So we'll tell you who's on call to the service, to where the documentation for it live, and then we help you grade the quality of these services across things like production readiness and security standards. And so it's a great way to get visibility into what's being built at the company and whether it's meeting the standards of your engineering team.
Now, is it like an automated process of gathering all your microservices?
Yeah, exactly. So we can do service discovery. So we'll integrate with things like Kubernetes or your Git repos or APM tools, and then automatically map services to all the data around them. And so we can just ingest into your platform and then pull everything out and kind of do a lot of automated guessing on where everything lives.
Excellent. Now, you guys you've had a rapid rise in terms of growth and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you know what, Anish, quite frankly, a lot of companies in tech did over the last few years. The whole digital transformation and everything. But what do you think is what's really driving the business of Cortex?
Absolutely. I think what we're seeing is that software has become incredibly complex and it's become a core part of every company, right? Every company becomes a software company at the end of the day, and it's not just microservices. What goes into your software is databases, pipelines, libraries, so many different components, and each of these has their own owner and comes with their own set of tribal knowledge. And as your company scales and gets bigger, it just starts living in people's heads on like what's a good quality service, who owns this, who owns that. And then when there's an incident, it becomes incredibly difficult to triage and figure out who's actually responsible for the service, where are the downstream dependencies. I think all of these things really impact developer productivity and efficiency. And so that's why if you look at our customer base, we have companies like Roblox who, obviously technology first, reliability is very core focus, but we also have customers like Restoration Hardware, right, who also have services and, they build software, and it's very important for them that, their services are reliable and secure and engineers have understanding of what's going on. And so that's why I think really when we raise our Series A, I think we really pitch it as if you're a software company and you have over 80 engineers, you're facing the problems that Cortex tries to solve.
Absolutely. One of the things around microservices, a niche we've seen, and we speak to a lot of companies, obviously, is there's this misconception. You could have an application, let's say, that's running a half a dozen microservices. Yeah. You could have an infrastructure that's running dozens of microservices. Yeah. And then, there's a segment of our audience that says, hey, we're running hundreds. Yeah. If not more, microservices. Absolutely. Yeah. In your experience, what's the sweet spot?
Yeah, I think that traditionally we've seen you between like that, once you hit 50 services, it's when you start thinking about how do I organize this in some way. And, we see companies introduce service meshes around then. They'll use Confluence or Google Docs to organize, where each service lives. And then I think around 100 services, it's like, okay, I need something. So, like
the spreadsheet isn't doing it
Yeah, the spreadsheet
anymore.
Isn't doing it for us. And so most of our customers are
So that's your sweet spot.
Yeah, I'd say 100 to like all the way to 500 services, but then you also have, thousands of services like a Roblox situation where it's just, they were, adopted microservices very early, and now it's just kind of this, Wild West.
So that brings up an interesting question, though, then. And it's sort of like if you look at, the universe since the Big Bang. Yeah. And you see it, expanding. Yeah. Is the amount of microservices an organization running directly just related to how long they're running microservices? Yeah. Or is there like certain like implosion or explosion points?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think it's almost tied to the growth of the engineering team, because I think, companies introduce microservices so that they can start shipping code faster, so there's continuous deployment. There's a lot of benefits to introducing a service-oriented architecture, but then what ends up happening is microservices create autonomous teams that, are very siloed from the rest of the company. And so, for example, I used to work at Uber, and I understood the services on my team, but there were thousands that were being built all across the company, and I just, they're named after like TV shows, and so it becomes difficult for engineers to really understand what's going on. And so I think they are a natural evolution of growing as a company, and they start scaling because engineers just start spinning up services to do different things, and I think it kind of gets out of control.
Yeah. Don't say that, because I mean, so is this evolution to chaos sort of the natural evolution, then, you think, that you absolutely need a Cortex kind of thing to try to wrap your head around it?
I believe so, and I think, a lot of our customers had built internal versions of Cortex before migrating, and a lot of times it's for compliance reasons even. It's like, we need to know who owns a service. Right. The recent Log4j vulnerability, it caused so many companies to look at their service architecture, and it was really difficult. How do you tell who owns a service? That exercise can be really difficult for most companies. It doesn't matter if you have microservices or not. Even in a monolith, there's different services and people own different parts of that monolith. Same set of issues. It's just a different way to kind of name the problem.
Got it. All right, excellent. New news coming out maybe in a couple weeks.
Yeah, so we're working on this product called Resource Catalog. So right now, you can represent anything you want in Cortex. It's just YAML files to represent your services. but we're actually going to be building native integrations with things like AWS and other resources to actually pull them in. So you'll be able to say, hey, this service depends on these S3 buckets, these databases, and then visualize that in like a dependency graph. And so it's going to be really interesting being able to represent your infrastructure inside of Cortex.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if we mentioned the website, did we?
Yeah, so you can just find us at cortex.io.
.io.
Yeah.
Hey man, Anish, thanks for stopping by here.
Absolutely.
Enjoy Valencia, enjoy the rest of CNCF.
Thank you so much.
Check out Cortex at cortex.io. We're going to take a break here on the floor of KubeCon. We'll be right back.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to TechstrongTV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with Patty Byers, who is the CTO of Ably. Patty, thank you so much for joining me today. I do appreciate it.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Great. So can you tell me a little bit about Ably?
Ably, yes. Ably provides an edge messaging platform. What we do is we make it easy for developers to provide real-time data and live experiences reliably to millions of people. So the kinds of things people do with edge messaging is provide live updates for food deliveries, live updates for sports and other events, notifications, chat, interactivity generally. So what it is at its core, under the hood, is a pub/sub messaging service that provides messages real time to and from internet connected devices. So this is the thing that sets edge messaging apart from other event streaming systems that people might be familiar with, like Kafka.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
We were founded in 2016. We launched in 2016. Right now, we power real-time experiences to 300 million devices a month, and we're expanding significantly. We're looking to be hitting 1 billion devices a month by the end of 2024.
Wow, that's great. That's pretty impressive. And it's interesting because I don't think a lot of people think about edge messaging when we're talking about just the customer experience in general. But I can imagine that your business pretty much exploded at the beginning of the pandemic.
It did, yes. And one of the surprising things is this is a new category, right? It's the first, only people recently would have heard of messaging, but the Ably itself, as I said, has existed for many years, and the services like it have existed for many years. But what is new is, as adoption of these kinds of services has grown, what's become really significant is the degree to which services now intrinsically depend on these experiences, right? So instead of just simply being used to provide a greater deal of interactivity in a website or service, now people are building apps, if you think of Miro or Figma, where by trying to provide the sort of remote digital analog of what would have been an in-person experience, people are building services that really intrinsically need this real-time data communication. And yeah, as you say, a number of the use cases we support now are things where the trend was already happening, but COVID massively accelerated the trend.
Yeah. So you guys recently came out with a State of Edge messaging report. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some of the findings in that report, but can you tell me what you guys set out to do with the report?
Yeah, so as I said, the category is quite new, even though the concept itself isn't. And one of the things we set out to do is to try to try to use the fact that Gartner, for example, have come out and they've defined this category of messaging. We wanted to try and crystallize our understanding and, get a broad overview of the state of the industry for people's adoption and implementation of these kinds of services. So one of the most significant findings is that a significant number of companies still attempt to build the infrastructure themselves to provide this kind of service. And in a way, that's not that surprising because, superficially, what we do really is quite simple. The technical challenges come from doing it reliably, doing it in a way that's globally distributed and providing the scale that companies really will need to be able to support their growth in the future. So the findings of the report really bore that out. So a significant number of companies have attempted to build a sort of homegrown infrastructure to do edge messaging. More than 50%, 65% of DIY solutions that people have built have had a significant outage or significant downtime in the last 12 to 18 months. Also, there are companies report significant velocity, impact, and significant opportunity cost when they depend on some in-house infrastructure, and then they have to either expend engineering effort getting that to scale, getting that to meet their new use cases, or maybe even just devote their best engineering teams to building that instead of building the things that will give their business core value. On the opportunity side, what we found from the report is 89% of engineering decision makers said that scalable edge messaging infrastructure is something they see as giving a distinct competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. So as everything becomes more immersive, more interactive, more direct, sort of more person-to-person interaction mediated by these services over time, it's increasingly obvious that this will be a critical business dependency for competitive advantage. And it's increasingly obvious that it's a more engineering resource intensive and challenging problem to build yourself than people sort of previously imagined.
Got it. So do you, maybe based on the results of the report, do you see more organizations maybe deciding that they want to just abandon their homegrown and maybe move over to something that is something along the lines of what your company offers, just because, to your point, it's so difficult to create and have that high quality technology and customer experience, just being able to manage it on their own?
Yeah, absolutely. We see a significant number of companies who come to us having, built something themselves. Mm-hmm. And, like I say, a developer's first instinct often is just to build it yourself. How hard can it be? But they hit scaling limits or they hit reliability limits. And, we have a customer, for example, who started out, they built a system themselves, and systematically they've been trying to remove every single point of failure from their infrastructure as they scale. And, coming to Ably and replacing their existing service was one of the ways they do that. So we do see that a lot of companies coming to us when they reach a scale and maturity where they want to outsource this to a dedicated provider. But the other kind of company, much more recently is companies who are cloud native from the beginning. And they have a serverless instinct to building everything. And in the same way that, today you wouldn't dream of building your own CDN, you would go and provide a commercial service. Mm-hmm. So for anything that needs to be scalable, then you go to a serverless offering. And that is increasingly the first instinct of many companies building services. And that's the other category of customer we have today.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And so, I can see definitely the applications from the customer facing point of view, but are there other applications that your technology would excel in that might not be, quote unquote, customer facing?
There are a few. So we do support a number of companies where it is, there is IoT type applications or machine to machine type interactions, that kind of thing. But increasingly, and where we think the real growth is where the service is mediating interactions with humans. And that is where the need for real time, and that is, perceptibly real time, that is delivering events in 200 milliseconds or less. That's where that need comes about, because you need the human perception of sort of instantaneity. And that is where the sort of edge nature of the architecture becomes important, right? So in order to achieve those latencies, you need to be providing the service at a point somewhere on the globe with proximity to your end user. And so it is increasingly in, as I say, human to human or human to machine interactions that customers use ably. And so we are directly connected to the end user for most of the services we support.
And it's almost like a greenfield opportunity for organizations if they do have this type of technology, because really, I would imagine it can improve their customer interactions just multifold. So it seems like kind of a slam dunk for this type of technology to be integrated into any, especially customer facing applications. So do you expect that your organization is going to see, greater acceptance and greater, more organizations actually adopting your technology more quickly, and maybe not even, maybe skipping the whole let's try and do it ourselves, or we'll just go get Ably or another technology like that?
Yeah, definitely. So everything is becoming more interactive, right? If ever now you're on a site where you have to refresh, then there's something wrong, right? It feels broken. So it's increasingly the expectation that things are real time. It's increasingly, people are building applications and services in a competitive environment where how immersive the service is really matters. We're increasingly in a world where things that succeed get virally adopted. And so you can achieve huge scale very quickly. And if you build something and you're even remotely successful with it, the likelihood is you're going to need some large scalable service to support it. And there's no way you would keep up by sort of building that yourself. So yeah, no, absolutely. We feel this is just the beginning for this kind of service. As you said, with COVID, that accelerated the trend for more human-to-human interactions being mediated by real-time online services. If you think of applications like Figma, this is you're interacting with entities that never existed in the physical world increasingly. And that is more and more a feature of the services people are building. So yeah, we think there is, in the same way that a few years ago, there was a category of cloud native companies that came about, and they decided from the outset to build everything in a cloud native way. Well, now there's a category of companies that are building things, they're not adding real time or interactivity later. They're building things that intrinsically depend from day one on real time event delivery.
So I'm really kind of intrigued by this whole idea of the machine-to-machine interaction and your technology's ability to foment that. And specifically as it relates to what we've been seeing over the past couple of years with digital transformation and the increased adoption of automation in general. So do you think that actually might at some point kind of overshadow or usurp what you're seeing now with the human to machine, or just the current applications for your technology?
It's really hard to tell. I think the IoT space is at the moment, it's a massive opportunity in the sense that for every human, there might be literally hundreds of individual devices that want to connect. So that scale is enormous, but it's also hugely fragmented at the moment. And there's a whole bunch of different, point solutions, point technologies for all sorts of different categories of of IoT problem. So whether or not that industry eventually converges on using, essentially similar technical solutions or not, we don't know. If that happens, we want to be there, but it's hard to predict where that's going to go. But certainly, whatever happens, the scale will be huge.
So this is the first year that you guys have put together this this survey, correct? State of Edge messaging. Okay, yeah. And excuse me, if this is this available for folks to take a look at it if they're interested in taking a look at the results of the report?
Yeah, absolutely. You can come to our site, ably.com, and get the report from there.
All right, great. Well, Patty, thank you so much for taking a couple minutes and talking to me about the report and the technology. It sounds like really, really nifty stuff, and I do appreciate your walking me through it today.
Right. Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's been very interesting. Thank you.
All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to TechStrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with Shash Anand, who is the Vice President of Product Strategy at SOTI. Shash, thank you so much for joining me today. Do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Charlene.
Good guy. I want to talk to you about a report that you guys recently put out. But before we dive into that, I was wondering if you could just introduce us to SOTI. And am I pronouncing it correctly?
You are pronouncing it correctly. SOTI,
hey,
yes.
Okay. All right, good.
Yeah, so SOTI is the world's most trusted provider of mobile and IoT management solutions. We have about 17,000 enterprise customers around the world. And what we offer is something called the SOTI One platform. Essentially, it's an integrated suite of technologies that are all geared towards helping companies with their business critical mobility. So just to give you an idea, one of the products is related to, say, helping companies build mobile apps. Imagine you and I are not developers, but I can guarantee you that I can help you with using this tool to help you take, say, a paper and pen form and convert it into a mobile app in literally a matter of minutes with a drag and drop type experience as an example. We also have something called mobile device management, which is the idea that an IT administrator needs to configure security applications, upgrade firmware on different devices from iOS, Windows, Android, Linux even. So how as an IT administrator do I get to configure the applications that need to go on these devices, the files, the content that needs to go on them? So they use our tools to do that. And then of course, diagnosing and supporting these tools. So once that user is using the device, maybe they've run into a problem. Maybe they are not sure how to use an application. How do I give them that real-time support? How do I remote into the device, use my mouse and keyboard to control the device? How do I help that user get the log files from the device without having them have to do it all themselves? So we make all of that management of the devices as well as the users super easy. And in the back end, we're also collecting some data so that we can kind of give that IT administrator a bit of an ability to be proactive about things that are going to be happening with those devices. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we're about.
That's a lot, but certainly the technologies and the services are all, I would imagine, very, very important for a lot of organizations. I mean,
yes.
Really, who doesn't use their mobile device for work these days? It just seems like, and I remember the days when mobile device management was early. I mean, we're talking really, really early days.
You remember,
and people had like their personal cell phone and then their work cell phone. And then maybe there was another one. It was like, I'm so glad that those days are over, but we have, the whole space has come a long way. So good on you guys that you've got such great technologies. But I want to talk to you about the SOTI 2022 sustainability report.
Yes.
And it's very, very interesting. And I think pretty timely that we're having this conversation because there has been such a huge emphasis these days on, especially over the last 6 months ago, on sustainability in general and what organizations really need to consider. And I don't know if it's just the stars aligning that everybody now is so much more focused on sustainability, or if it's just kind of the sign of the times with everybody working from home and maybe we're not seeing the churn, or maybe we are seeing the churn that that
Yep.
organizations, normally have with laptops and other computing devices. But I want to dive in and talk a little bit about the results of the report, which is, I guess, tell me what the name of the report is, actually.
Yeah, okay, sure. So it's called Reduce, Reuse, Rethink: From Discard Mentality to Tech Sustainability. What we're trying to do is we're trying to take a closer look at how, as you said, despite this kind of emphasis on corporate sustainability, enterprises across the United States are actually disposing of electronic devices, what we call e-waste. They're doing it prematurely. And this includes things like not just your typical phone, but also think about handheld devices, think about scanners, barcode readers, wearable devices, laptops and desktops are actually the highest, laptops and wearables are actually some of the highest electronic devices that are being wasted way too prematurely. And in fact, 7 in 10 US IT leaders from the report that we found, 7 in 10 said that they are disposing of these devices unnecessarily.
That it's kind of mind-boggling, and also if you think about lately, with the supply chain issues being what they've been over the last year
point.
or so.
Yeah, good point.
I can't imagine why an organization would want to prematurely get rid of this technology. But I mean, obviously, there are major implications to e-waste in general. Not just environmental, but also, the cost to the organization to get rid of that technology in a in an environmentally friendly manner, quote unquote. I don't think there's any an environmentally friendly way to get rid of e-waste. But what so what are some of the reasons why organizations are getting rid of some of this technology prematurely?
So some of the major reasons that have come out are that they are trying to kind of appease the end users who want to be on the latest and greatest hardware. So they do feel that attraction. So for example, from the report, we found that 67% believe that having the latest mobile technology hardware at their disposal makes their organization more attractive for workers. They also tend to have this perception that the end of, say, for example, the device is dictated by the end of the battery life. And this is a misconception. A lot of the devices that are being used in the enterprises do have replaceable batteries. In fact, many of them are replaceable batteries. So if we can get people to really understand that device's end time doesn't mean the batteries, you could potentially replace that battery and you'll see the performance of that device improve. There is also the idea that a lot of companies are leveraging warranties and saying, okay, when I'm out of warranty, I'm done. I got to replace my device. But similar to a car, right? If you have a car that maybe you've got a 3 or 4 year warranty or a 5 year warranty on, it doesn't mean that it's dead after those years and you have to replace it. So there are some perceptions out there that the device will last 1 to 2, 3 years maximum. Another reason is because you look at your own kind of mobile phone and how often do you replace that. So but in an enterprise world, you can actually increase the longevity of these devices quite a bit if they were properly managed, if you understood kind of a little bit more about what the usage, the user behavior is of the devices, and also the idea of firmware, the operating system that you're on. Sometimes you kind of say, okay, well, every year the operating system upgrades, and you have to look at the support that you get. So there is a little bit of perception that once it's been a couple of years, for some reason, 2 years is that magical number where people start looking at replacing. But yeah, those are some things that people are kind of considering.
So and I don't know if this is something that the survey or the report actually goes into, but the cost associated with getting rid of those devices, has that increased over the last couple of years, or is that something that organizations are even considering?
The cost has considerably increased because, as you mentioned, the idea of hybrid work from home. This is a lot of costs of shipping. Shipping costs are massive, and we're seeing that they're shipping devices to the end users' locations. When an issue comes up, they're actually shipping devices back to the IT department, their central office, and this shipping cost alone is a huge increase. Now, the other thing that's happening is the budgets. The budgets for IT hardware are increasing, and those that are thinking of the battery replacement, they're also budgeting 25% of their budget to just replacing the batteries of all devices. So I just have this quick story to tell you. We had a TNL company that came to us, and they were doing what they were doing was they were actually saying, okay, we're not going to replace the mobile devices. Thank you for letting us know these are obviously replaceable batteries, but they were replacing their batteries every 18 months. And the reason they were doing this, and across their entire fleet, and the reason they were doing this, as soon as one person reported an issue with their battery and maybe a second call came in, hey, my device isn't lasting a full shift, it's not even 8 hours. Instead of worrying about the next, call, they just said, let's have all of the devices get replaced with their batteries. This was costing them about $500,000 per year in just replacing batteries every 18 months. And so, yeah, that kind of woke us up, and we said, well, what can you do about that? So there are tools like a diagnostic intelligence tool that allows you to actually look at the battery behavior, the unique idea, the uniqueness of that battery. They're called smart batteries now. These smart batteries give you information about how many charge cycles that device has had. So if you, for example, say, drive a electric vehicle, they actually don't recommend that you charge it all the way to 100% as an example. Why? Because that decreases the longevity of the device. You also shouldn't always keep it plugged in, because that will then cause the battery to only trickle between 100 and 99%, and you're just always at that level. It is actually good to go down 80%, 20%. There's also the idea of wireless charging that a lot of people do, which is very, very convenient, of course, but not the best for your battery's lifetime. In fact, it's better to leverage kind of the AC model and plug in, and when it gets to 100%, unplug it. So there's a lot of this kind of behavior that can be identified and rectified, and sometimes it's a very easy fix to kind of understand how to increase the longevity of the devices.
Yeah, I think also sometimes if a device has received a software update, it's kind of making it weird, funky, kind of draining the battery a little bit quicker than normal. Yes. I think a lot of users might not recognize that that's actually a software problem. It's not a hardware problem.
Yeah, exactly.
So there could be some help that the IT department could say, no, you don't need a new device. You just need just wait a couple of days. They'll fix it, and then it'll work.
Yeah, exactly. And related to that, Charlene, I would say that a lot of the enterprises, they have the ability to also say, I'd like to stay on this particular firmware for a little while because I want to make sure that these new apps, I want to test out the new firmware. I want to try it out in a few smaller groups. So there is that ability to control what firmware, what applications, what versions, and make sure that it all works. And a lot of times the new hardware that's coming out is maybe a new camera, and the new camera has better resolution, and that's why I want to get the new device. But in reality, it doesn't have anything to do with your job. So why do you need that new kind of shiny new camera?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I mean, I've had people say, they're Mac users and they want to get the Mac the new Mac because it's got the little toolbar thing up at the top.
Yeah, so cool.
I have that. Have I ever used it?
No.
So
sounds cool, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I think from a consumer standpoint, I can certainly understand that individuals want to have the latest and greatest, shiny object. From an enterprise or a business perspective, I can't imagine that is going to be top of mind for a lot of organizations. I mean, yeah, it's really cool to have that stuff and be able to offer it to their employees, but if it's costing them so much money per year, not to mention the impact that it's having on the environment, I would think that organizations would be a lot more reticent to just kind of go out and replace all of their devices at the drop of a hat. So do you expect that this is going to start kind of maybe toning down a little bit, that we'll see kind of a decrease in that happening?
I think so. So the report uncovered a lot of interesting stuff when it came to these IT leaders, because they claim to have clear targets actually for reducing e-waste. So they claim to be working towards corporate social responsibility. It's becoming a bigger topic. They have clear KPIs around sustainable device management. So we are seeing this as kind of a trend that's increasing. But again, it is also that mentality that 67% said that the latest mobile technology hardware at their disposal is how they attract their workers, and that perception has to be something where, hey, if we can talk about sustainability, if we can talk about these types of mandates and give awareness to the end users that we are trying to kind of reduce our e-waste, I think that would go a long way. So it's about visibility and transparency about why we're staying on certain devices at a certain time. I think is very important. So communication.
I think that is a great way to approach this. And I would just say that the one piece of technology that fails me the most are those cables. It's not the devices themselves, it's the cables. And that's what kind of drives me crazy about the whole situation, because and I have to, as an employee, I have to go out and buy the cables to replace them. On my, I can't call IT and say, send me a new cable. I mean, I could, but it kind of hamstrings me for a day or two. So, but
even the cables are nice to have a standard, right? It's nice to have a standard now. I believe Apple has to move to the USB-C standard coming up, and they did in their iPads, not on their phones just yet. So that's good, because once we have a standard, it will be all of these USB-C, for example, wires will all be available, and you can use them, share them amongst all of your hardware, even, which is nice.
Yeah, that's a great point. And standardization maybe could be key for some of this e-waste. I mean, certainly we're always going to have Macs, we're always going to have PCs, but at least if we can standardize on certain technologies, I think that'll help a lot. So before we close things out, any other final takeaways from the survey report?
Yeah, from the survey, I would say that sorry.
That's all right.
I just want to say that the survey really uncovered, I'd say, three big things. One is around making sure that the technology that you use to support the technology that you're using will help you save a tremendous amount of money, and from discarding these devices prematurely. So if you had the right technology in place, that'd be very important. Something like a mobile management solution, like the SOTI One platform, it really helps you focus on diagnosing and repairing these devices remotely. And I think that's a big thing. And we talked a little bit about that with the shipping costs. So how do you reduce these costs? I think that there are a lot of tools out there that allow you to do this, and you can save hundreds of thousands of dollars. As an example, I gave with the $500,000 per year expense. So that was huge. And if you are going to have to dispose of devices, it's very, very important that you dispose of devices in a proper sequence. One is about looking for, say, e-waste recycling companies. There are many out there. There's options to donate devices to, say, not-for-profit organizations that are looking for these cheaper devices. So there's a way to hand down these devices. And of course, it's also important to make sure that you not just wipe the device, but you want to be able to clean these devices before you give them out, because that could be an opportunity for somebody like a hacker to get in and find these older devices, which you might have just discarded, but they could be turned on, they could be replaced, the batteries could be replaced, and then all of a sudden all this information is available. So you need to make sure you clean your devices properly, remove the data, maybe back it up to the cloud or put it onto a USB stick, but move the data before you wipe it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, Shash, thank you so much for talking to me a little bit about the report. If folks want to take a look at the report themselves, is it freely available?
It is freely available. You can go to www.soti.net, and there's a link to the sustainability report on that site.
Awesome. Well, Shash, thank you again for your time. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Charlene.
Thanks again. It's a really, really fascinating report, sounds like. So I'm going to check it out myself.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. All right, everybody, please stick around. We have got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
is TechstrongTV.
The distinct pleasure of being joined by Arthi Raman, who is CEO and founder with Titanium. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Mitch. Excited to be here. Tell you all a little bit about myself and our company.
That'd be great. Well, let's do that. Let's start out. Tell us a little bit about you. Give us some background.
Absolutely.
The company.
Yep. So, founder, CEO of Titanium, have a background in mathematics and economics. My favorite thing to do is to take math and apply it to solve hard problems. What we do at Titanium is we have what's called a broad spectrum data security platform. We do 3 really cool things. We do what's called encryption in use. We're the only company that does high performance encryption in use. In other words, we're able to slice and dice and search and sort through data without decrypting it. So if you attach our product to a data platform, a database of sorts, and you're a bad guy, and you come into an enterprise and you make your way and you steal admin credentials to this platform, you cannot leave with data that is in clear text. So this technology is basically protecting you from insiders, from ransomware, and things like that. Another cool thing we do is on the data privacy side. So we're able to take data that leaves our systems and send it in what are called privacy preserving formats. The world cares a lot about privacy these days. So data that's de-identified, anonymized, tokenized, masked, redacted, we do all of it. The third and really cool thing we do is around key management. Again, not to get too technical on you here,
no worries. I'm from the PKI industry. So
wonderful,
yeah, we
right?
can talk all about it.
Awesome. So a lot of the world is getting SaaSified these days, right? SaaS is it. So SaaS means there's a third-party company that is now the steward, the keeper of someone else's data. And these SaaS platforms, when they are compromised, end up compromising all of their customers. So with a technology like Titanium, we're able to do what's called HYOK, hold your own key. So if a SaaS company has 20,000 customers and they use Titanium, all 20,000 can have their own keys and they can keep them in their own key vaults. And then Titanium will grab them and encrypt the data real time. And so that extra bit of protection, which is sort of like on the data supply chain, where the data is now your data sits with someone else, we protect that as well.
Not just one HSM. If you break into, you've got everything, right?
Exactly, right? So that's kind of what we do. The outcomes we drive are obviously security and privacy, as well as liability and compliance.
Interesting. Great topic, great space.
Thank you.
Very important.
Yes, very important.
Well, tell us a little bit about, so how long has the company been
We started
together?
middle of 2019.
2019, okay.
But we're a high gestation company in that a lot of intellectual property, patents, certifications. So we've been out the gate selling since the fall of last year. So relatively young that way.
Interesting. Did this come out of any university or studies that you did in college, or is it something you built along the way and
it did
came
not.
up with this idea?
It did not, but I am, trained in Symantec, so I'm pretty hardcore security before Titanium.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. That's where the security chops come from.
That is correct. That is correct.
Excellent. Well, tell us about. I know you won some awards during RSA, so I want to hear about some of the recognition that you.
We did. This was so fantastic. We were hoping to get 1. We got 4. We won across 4 categories. So we got Best Next Gen Cybersecurity Startup. What's to not love about that?
That's good.
We got Best Ransomware Defense, which again is fantastic. We got Best Zero Trust. And we also got Best Data Encryption. So I'm thinking, what's there left for anybody else to win?
Yeah, other than XDR, but that's not your space. So
no,
I
it's
mean,
not
that's sort of the other hot thing, right? That and API
correct.
security. But I think for your space, you did really well.
We did. We're really excited. We made sure all the team was there. We had a little red carpet moment. It was amazing.
Best Zero Trust. Wow. And given that's such a broad term, that's pretty substantial, I think, especially for a relatively speaking young company.
Absolutely.
Well, tell us a little bit about as you work with customers and obviously you're building products to meet those needs. I'm curious about the first product or first technology that you talked about. Is this data that's kind of in flight that's being processed and actively used, and it's remaining encrypted while you're doing searching and indexing against it? Essentially, so if someone gets into the machine, gets into memory, they're not going to be able to, let's copy a few pages out of memory. We've got some nice plentiful data to exploit.
You got it. That's
Okay.
exactly right. So data exists in 3 states: at rest when you're not using it, in transit when it's going across the wire, and then in use, so in memory while it's being queried and analyzed and indexed. So that in-use bit has not been able to be protected until we came along. Now the NSA has this technology called homomorphic encryption, which only the NSA and a few other people can afford to use because it's very expensive resource-wise. But that data in use is what is stolen when you steal administrative credentials into a database or a data platform. And so you don't find companies paying ransom when you lose one user's data. They're paying if you use 100 million users' data, right? So that's the vector we protect against.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is that relevant to a particular set of industries, or I mean, I'm sure everybody could take advantage of it, but I can imagine with the privacy aspect of it, going after that information for healthcare or finance would be great industries for that kind of technology.
You're asking and answering. This is absolutely
Where's
right.
the
It's
script?
amazing.
I should have gotten a script here.
It's
I know
awesome.
I didn't have one.
It's awesome. So we have 3 types of customers at this point, 4 if you include government. So there's regulated, and I say regulated to include everyone that cares as much about their sensitive data as the financial services, the healthcare. Because for those guys, I don't have to go sell the problem. They already know the problem. We also have SaaS companies, right? This is like a horizontal slice of the market. So anybody that is the keeper of someone else's data, they don't want to be the source of compromise. We have a third category, which I think eventually becomes our most powerful, and these are data-intensive products. So think like companies whose entire business is in sensitive data, like Uber, DoorDash, right? Companies like that, eBay. So all these people have like all this transactional information, people, their locations, tile, right? So those are Expedia. So those sorts of would be our customers as well. And then government, I put government in their own bucket. So, we are one of the few startups that has a seat at the table when the federal CIOs are planning ransomware defense, and we're hoping that pays off for us as well. But,
Interesting. When we talk about ransomware defense, is that particular to the kind of data in use aspect of it, or are there other things that you're doing that help defend against that?
So the ransomware defense, and you'll find different people, presenting it differently. I think it has 3 distinct parts to the solution. We are only one of 3. The 3 parts are prevention and detection. So you want to make sure they don't get in, and if they get in, you find them as fast as you can. So that's where you'll see the CrowdStrikes, the SentinelOnes, those guys, right? Making sure that they do that. That's not all, because it only takes one little leak. Then there's the backup and recovery people, right? If they come in, lock up your systems, you can't access anything, you want to throw that away, stand up a new system, make sure that's not infected. So that's the backup guys, the Rubrics, the Cohesities, those guys, right? But there's the whole data extortion piece, right? Because time after time, companies are paying ransom even after they stand up their systems. So that's where we play. So if you are defended by Titanium, bad guys come and steal your data, they cannot extort you or your customers or your partners or your board members or your employees with it. So that last remaining reason why ransoms were paid is where we play. So we're a third of the solution, and that's kind of our piece of the ransomware problem.
And they can't do that because it's encrypted. They can't.
It is
get
encrypted,
into it.
so they might, get what is on the screen, what is rendered on that one screen, but they will not get anything from the back end.
Okay, great. I'm curious too about the second scenario you mentioned, the use case you mentioned around SaaS applications, because a shared risk model doesn't mean shared total responsibility. Ultimately, it all falls back on us, right?
Yes.
As the consumers of those services. So how do I work with a SaaS service provider if they were a Titanium technology customer?
Yeah. So you, the customer of the SaaS, would have responsibility for your keys. Your application would work as it always has. We are completely transparent to both the application as well as the database, but it would be your responsibility to supply key material, and you would hold it. So now, let's say you had some reasons to, maybe you're not getting along with your SaaS provider anymore, you want to turn the keys off. You can turn the keys off from your end, or they get attacked, or something bad happened, or the feds come calling and they have to give away your data. You control those keys, you turn them off, the rest of the SaaS application and the rest of the database works as it always did. So what we're promising is non-disruption. So you could have a SaaS that has commingled data, right? They have everybody's data in one big backend. They're not standing up different instances for each customer. We're able to operate in those scenarios. So for many SaaS companies that approach us, it's less about the encryption in use, and I say this, being transparent, and more about the HYOK, the hold your own key. So obviously they want to be able to say, look, none of our employees can get at your data, that's fantastic, but also that you have the ultimate control. That also speaks to data residency sometimes, to ITAR and things like that, right? The data privacy laws, the owner of the data is the owner of the keys. So we support some of those requirements.
And do the SaaS providers have to do any re-architecting to kind of build that in to make that more easily to own your own key or hold your own key?
That's a great question. So our HYOK infrastructure can sit alongside existing architectures, and it can orchestrate and hand keys over to Titanium protected systems on the back end.
Key store, key rotator.
Key orchestrator, yeah. We have 4 different products that support different types of data platforms. So it really depends on what the SaaS backend is. So we have a vault, a proxy, a plugin, an API service, and typically we're able to mix and match and make it work. So we're trying to be like the Lego block version of composable security, I think is the word, composable security.
I'm not telling you anything I'm sure you don't already know, but PKI gets complex very fast. And you're trying to roll your own, and it's why one of the reasons why you use so many certificate services, but there's a big gap between those two extremes. So, and organizations that are sophisticated enough to manage their own, that's a rarity in the mid-market, even in some of the enterprises. It's a big challenge.
Actually, I'm finding that some of the things, the provisions we made for smaller enterprises, such as we partner in with companies that offer Titanium as a service and some other, simplifying mechanisms, the larger customers are taking advantage of it first, because no one actually wants to manage any more infrastructure than they have to. They're like, can you just give this to me in sort of a managed form? And that's what they want to do.
We're busy. We're taking my resources to do that.
More expertise, more troubleshooting. They'd rather just have a nice SLAs and have just it as a managed service. So.
Yeah, it's something, I don't know if you see it also, but security leadership seems to be pulled more into less of an operational own it myself, right, into even my corporate network, my office network, my security, a lot of things, working through partners, working through service providers instead of being the best technologist as a security person, more of a best risk management strategy, as well as, technology skills. You see that also?
I do, and I think it's a huge contradiction. I think on the one hand, the threats are getting worse and the inevitability of being compromised is like looming on us. On the other hand, we want to make sure that our core business does what we're good at and outsource everything else. But it's not like the providers are more secure than we would be ourselves. So we rely on legal language and contracts, right? There's not a lot of enforcement. This is why that SaaS slice is very important to us. Right, because we want to make sure that as enterprises do this digital transformation, this cloud transformation, and as you're getting all this pressure, like, hey, outsource or partner in for things that aren't your core competence, you don't have a huge compromise in security. Because I think we're going to see more, SolarWinds, Log4j, and we're going to see more. So the more we can shore up those SaaS backends, the better off everyone's going to be.
I agree. Well, tell us a little bit more about what folks can find out more about Titanium, what things you might be able to offer on the website for resources or check out product, things like that.
Absolutely. So we've been evangelizing this for a good year and a half now, and our website is titanium.io, Titaniam, not a U, .io, and on there we have blogs and videos and data sheets and all kinds of resources. There's not a lot that we put behind any kind of form, so you can find a ton of stuff, even just on our YouTube channel and things like that. And that would be a great place to start. There's always a button. There's a direct calendar link as well, and we're happy to hop on a call and explain to people. We're the company that doesn't nag people by email, so we've had about 5,000 people or so come to our educational events, and we haven't sent out one harassing message, so people shouldn't be worried about that. But do come, do learn, because we think the more people know that this is possible, you can do encryption in use and you can protect your data, the better off everyone's going to be. So
Good.
we'll be there for that.
Well, Arati Raman, thank you very much for coming, from CEO, founder from Titanium with an A, not
With an
UM. I am, as I was explained to me
you.
about how to think about Titanium. Congrats on the awards and the recognition. I know how important that is as a young company.
Absolutely.
And helps really with kind of recognition of the work that you've done. So.
Thank you so much for having me. Love the conversation. You're already an expert, so some of those questions.
Not like
are
you, but
Thank you.
Nice to talk
Awesome.
with you.
Thank
Come
you.
back and we'll talk again soon.
We'll love to. Thank you.
Great.
This is TechstrongTV.
Well, I have the great pleasure of being joined by Nick Sorensen. Nick is CEO with Wistic, and we're here at RSAC 2022 and excited to hear about some news. Welcome, Nick. Good to be talking with you.
Thanks. Great to be here, Mitch.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. So tell us a little bit about yourself. We've met for the first time, and tell us a little bit about Wistic.
Yeah, no, happy to talk about that. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I hail from Salt Lake City, Utah. My wife and I and our 4 kids live there, love spending time in the outdoors. And Wistic is a vendor security network. So what we're dealing with is the pains around assessing your third-party vendors. We're all familiar with the data breaches that we've seen recently, SolarWinds, some of the third-party software-related incidents like Log4j, and those types of things. And so that's really the space that we play in.
Is Wistic in sort of the software supply chain side of it, or the risk management of vendors and suppliers?
Yeah, one way to think about Wistic is we really bring the buyers and sellers together inside of a network. Very similar to how LinkedIn did it with recruiters and job seekers. And before LinkedIn, a recruiter would request a resume from a job seeker. Enter LinkedIn, you get rid of the resume request. You can go check out my profile. I can check out yours. We can essentially vet each other before we ever meet or request information. We're doing a very similar thing with vendor security. As you may be familiar, a lot of the vendor security assessments that happen today are hundreds of questions that get emailed or sent to a third-party vendor you probably responded to. Or
we know
or
that
done these
nothing
assessments.
changes after they fill out the survey, right?
Very static, reactive process at the tail end of a buying cycle typically. It slows down the sales process for the sales team. It puts a burden and friction for information security teams on both sides of the coin. And we end up wasting a lot of the time on the admin stuff. We could repurpose that time to actual security. So one thing that Wistic is doing is we're eliminating that friction. We're enabling vendors or sellers to proactively publish a Wistic profile with all of their security, privacy, compliance information, put it at the fingertips of their customers who need to do these assessments. And we essentially eliminate that weeks or months of back and forth requesting information, and we can repurpose that to more transparent discussions and assessment on security.
The process, so it's already done.
Yes.
You have to do it every time we have a new interaction.
Yeah, there's a lot of wasted work that gets repeated over and over again, and so that's really where we're focused.
It makes too much sense. I can't believe it. But, no, it sounds like an interesting approach. Well, so you mentioned you're a serial entrepreneur. What kind of other companies? You've been in security the whole time, or is this first venture into
first venture into security.
Okay.
So prior to this one, in the fintech and healthcare space, so totally unrelated. First, a startup that I was a part of was in the outdoor gear and apparel space. So kind of 3 different industries and adventures, all with their unique challenges and opportunities.
Oftentimes, as a fellow entrepreneur too, I've done companies. You take sort of the problems that you're seeing that you're not addressing in your current companies and say, those are all opportunities. Let me think about something on one of those paths for a company after the current one. And I'm assuming something like that probably happened with you.
In my last startup, we were dealing with a very forgotten aspect of financing in the medical industry. People faxing stuff back and forth and a very sort of manual process. And when I got introduced to the concept for Wistic with a couple of my initial partners, I saw a lot of similarities. It's kind of a forgotten piece of cybersecurity. It's not the sexy endpoint, AI-enabled, whatever side of cybersecurity, and so it doesn't get as much flash and attention, or it hasn't, didn't 5-6 years ago when we started. It's getting a lot more attention now. But when you talk to chief information security officers and their teams, they're just spending an inordinate amount of time doing this, oftentimes spreadsheet and email work. And so that was sort of the genesis for the concept.
Well, the shared risk model doesn't mean no risk. It doesn't mean I've handed it off so I don't have to worry about it. It's still your risk.
Yeah.
Maybe shared now. It's actually dependency risk.
Correct.
As much as anything. Well, you have some new news. Tell us about what's happening.
Yeah, we're excited.
With Wistic.
We just announced yesterday our Series B funding round, a $35 million financing led by JMI Equity, which we're really excited about. Participation from ForgePoint Capital, which is a cybersecurity investor, as well as our existing investors, Emergence Capital, Album VC, and FJ Labs. So very excited about that, using that to invest in the future at Wistic. In addition to that, we've recently announced something that we're talking a lot about at RSA, which is the Security First Initiative. What this is, we got together with a group of our customers. A lot of our customers are some of the leading tech organizations in the world, so Airbnb, Atlassian, G2, Okta, these types of companies. And they all subscribe to Wistic, so they have this same shared belief, but we felt like it was time for a message to be delivered to the industry as a whole, sort of saying, this questionnaire-based approach, I send you questions, you send me answers, is a thing of the past, and we need to adopt a more transparent approach to this vendor security pain point. And Wistic can obviously enable that. So we collectively announced the Security First Initiative, which these companies and anyone who wants to join essentially indicates their willingness to put their information in their Wistic profile and proactively share that, transparently give access to their customers to that information so that they don't have to be asked. And that's a big shift that we're seeing in the industry. So that's getting a lot of momentum. A lot of companies are thinking around, how can I get more transparent? How can I put trust first? They're spinning up teams around that. So that's another initiative that we're really excited about.
Does this also include, well, congratulations on the fundraise. How much total then have you?
So just over 50 million total.
Great, good. I would imagine, tell me if this is part of this too, it's making the information available, being transparent about it, but also you can update it once or update it continuously. Everybody has the most up-to-date information.
Correct.
It isn't what I filled out 3 years ago,
Correct.
which is no longer relevant, out of date or whatever.
Yeah, and part of the reason why that doesn't happen today is just because of the burden, the administrative, manual nature of that. And so, that's a great way to think about what we're doing. If you can make it easier for companies to communicate that information, part of it has nothing to do with the information itself. Part of it has to do with just logistics. I need an NDA with you. I need to know who the person on the other side of the table is that's going to look at this information. Some of this basic, just sort of logistical process type stuff. If you can get that out of the way, and we sort of accommodate that in our platform, you can execute an NDA as a part of sharing your profile. You can expire access automatically. You can see if they viewed your information or not. Those types of access controls. If you can eliminate that pain, then you can again repurpose that time on doing deeper, better, broader assessments of your third-party vendors, which is what everyone really needs to do today as a result of the threat environment that we're living in.
I call it the dance of business, not business.
Yes,
right?
that's a good way to put it.
Getting to business.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about where you are in market. How long have you had product in market? You actually have customers. Where you are in that cycle, and then I'm curious about the use of funds, what you're planning to do with your new money.
So we've had product in market for about 6 years. We started with the buyer side of the network. So fundamentally, the unique approach that we have is that we're serving both sides of this coin. There are a lot of traditional or legacy vendor risk management offerings in the market. And essentially what they do is they automate the sending of a questionnaire. So we're still fundamentally asking questions, waiting for answers. And what we've uniquely done, again, is we've enabled the vendors or the third-party sellers to put that information in a profile and publish it to the Wistic network. All of the companies that need to do assessments get access to that. And you can also share that information as a vendor to your customers that are outside of Wistic and invite them in free of charge. But that's kind of the unique aspect or approach that we have taken in the market. What we want to do is continue to invest in the network. So we're continuing to build out both sides, both of those offerings. So where we started with the buyer side, I want to assess my vendors. That was in 2016. We launched the seller side in 2017. So we had about 5 years in the market with that. We launched at RSA in 2019 what we call the Trust Catalog, which is really the repository for the profiles. If I need to do an assessment on my vendors, I go to the Trust catalog to see what vendor profiles are available. Think of the LinkedIn search again as an example. In that initial launch in 2019 at RSA, we had 500 profiles. We now have over 40,000 profiles in the Trust catalog. So continuing to invest in expanding the network, continuing to add value to our customers, stay ahead from a leadership and innovation perspective. There's a lot of things we want to do. There's a lot of great ideas that our customers are discussing with us, and so we're going to continue to invest in that, in addition to just generally continuing to scale the business. So hiring across all teams, sales, marketing, customer,
R&D investment.
Facing, product and engineering is going to be a big investment area for us as well as we continue to expand.
Yeah, I think your LinkedIn, obviously you tell your story a lot, but your LinkedIn analogies is a good one. It made me think about Facebook and others. It's as much about the network, but it's also about my information, who I want to share with what. In Wistic, if I create this profile of my information, is it available to anybody that joins the network, or do I have to grant access to that, or here's what's public and then I can disclose more? You can imagine.
Good question, yeah.
I'm sure you get these privacy, how much can I control, who sees what in my information?
Yeah, that's been a key. So in the early days, it slowed us down because we've been very thoughtful about the privacy and ownership of the data. There are some companies in our space that sort of fine print in their terms of service, claimed ownership of that, and it's come back to bite them. So we feel very, we've been very thoughtful about that way we approach that, and we've always respected the ownership of the data from the third-party vendor who's building the profile. And so that's how it still works today from the beginning. So if I create a profile inside of Wistic, I can choose if I want that to be private and nobody can access that. I can choose if I want to make it public and everybody in the Wistic network can access it. I can choose to make the fact that I have a profile available, but the contents of it I need to approve, so they request access. So there's different levels of access controls and ownership of that data. I can put an NDA on that if I need you to sign that before you access it. So that's a really key component of what we do. It's part of the reason why we have a standalone offering on the vendor side of the coin. Because we've built a lot of feature functionality for the third-party vendors, we can do a lot more for the buyers that are doing those assessments. So it's kind of a counterintuitive approach to the market because everybody's focused on the company doing the assessment, and the vendor's almost been an afterthought. We kind of flipped it on its head.
Yeah, you can't do the build it and they will come. They need to be there for everybody to get value out of it.
Correct, yeah.
I'm curious about, so what does it take to, talk about time to value, from a startup perspective, any product perspective. What's the thing you have to overcome or the point you have to reach before either the buyer or the vendor say, yes, this is worth it. I'm willing to plunk down change to do this, or I'm willing to use this as my network to go get this information. Where's that crossover point?
Yeah. Do you mean after they engage with the product or as they're deciding
Yeah, once
to
they
make
say,
a purchase?
this is a great concept, right? Let me try it out. Okay, yes, I will do it. What is it that kind of gets them?
Typically on the I need to assess my vendor side of the house, it's that first what we call zero-touch assessment. The first time I go to assess a vendor and I realize they already have a profile in Wistic and I can use that to assess them. So you talk to customers that say, I did an assessment in hours or minutes instead of typical time, 6 to 8 weeks or whatever that process is. That's kind of the aha moment for someone on the buyer side of Wistic. On the vendor side, it's just the inverse. The first time you share that profile with your prospect or customer and they don't send you a questionnaire, and you experience a zero-touch assessment from the seller side. So, we have customers that are rolling this out to their sales teams, and they're used to getting 20, 30 questionnaires a month from their prospects and customers that InfoSec has to respond to. They go roll out Wistic, and 75% of those the next month are eliminated. That's kind of the aha moment. So it's really the same thing, just the flip side of the coin on both sides.
It makes me think of the whole RFI, RFQ. Are you attempting to go down that path and solve that problem, or is that a whole bailiwick of its own?
It's a different market. Now we integrate with RFPIO, which is a software that has tackled that space, and there are other good products in the space. We don't currently have ambitions to do that. We're very focused on this vendor security challenge. There's a lot of global opportunity in this one thing. Yeah.
Great. I don't know if you've talked about this with anyone. Current climate around for entrepreneurs, there's a lot of discussion about fundraising and VCs, if they're willing to part with money and as easily as they were maybe 9 months ago, or batten down the hatches for rough times ahead. Is this a good climate to? There's a lot of discussion about not a good climate to raise money and plan on almost being in survival mode, which is never a great place for a company. What's your experience? I know you were at the tail end of your fundraise for this round, but what's that experience been like in this climate?
Yeah, we kind of wrapped it up before a lot of this is hit, but I think it's not unfamiliar to us. We raised our Series A in the middle of COVID, started our last startup in 2008, 2009 recession. So some people talk about it's a good time to start a business or to do things like that in those climates and environments because of the changing landscape and game. But there's certainly, and you can read this in the news as well, there's certainly a lot of compression of valuation, even from just 7-8 months ago, 9 months ago, like you're saying, that we're seeing the public markets are getting destroyed from a SaaS perspective. There are still great growth stories there, and some stocks are doing a lot better than others. Seems like investors are optimizing more for sustainable, profitable growth these days. So, but yeah, it's definitely been impacted.
Yeah, it's interesting how that sort of flips, right? Yeah, spend money, get out there, get customer acquisition, all of that, or get product to, prove your profitability, prove your model, prove.
Yep.
Those, and like yourself, I've been through that too. And there is a lot of opportunity. I mean, when things are changing, it's a great time to be, the disruptor or to be in a position to take advantage of.
Correct.
Where the inflection points are.
Yeah, and a lot of, for example, in 2020 during COVID, we doubled the size of the company. It was a great time to hire.
We did too, actually, with our company, more than doubled. Yeah.
So we're thinking of the same thing right now as layoffs start happening and companies are sort of retrenching and stepping back. We're going to be leaning in and taking advantage of that opportunity. So that's kind of the way we think about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for sharing that experience with us too. Yeah. Well, great, Nick. It's been fun talking with you. Congratulations on the fundraise and the success so far with your customers. Where can folks find out more, learn more about Wistic and what you do and how they might be able to take advantage of it?
Yeah, Wistic.com, WHISTIC.com.
Just like the shirt?
Just like the shirt. They can actually get access to, as a part of the Security First initiative, we launched what we call Basic Profile. It gives every business the ability to come into Wistic and build their Wistic profile. So if you go to our website, you can get started there. It's very easy to spin up your profile. You can start sharing it with prospects and customers. You can publish it to the vendor security network. So it's probably the best way to get to know us.
Very good. Thanks, Nick, for joining us today. Be sure and check out Wistic.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet.
This is TechstrongTV.
Well, it's a great pleasure being joined by Tony Laro. Tony is Director of Security Technology and Strategy at Akamai. Tony, welcome. Good to be talking with you.
Thank you, Mitch. Good to be here.
Hey, we're going to talk about 3 interesting topics from your RSA topic, discussion, talk, etc. But first, would you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you and what you do at Akamai.
Yeah, so, Director of Security Strategy and Technology. And what that means basically is, I'm working with Akamai CISO community, analyst community, and really aligning what Akamai does and what we build from a technology perspective, making sure that fits in alignment with the needs of the community, right? So we're always trying to solve kind of the next big, great problem on the internet. And obviously security is a major undertaking, and that's one of the main priorities of my mission. So it's a lot of fun.
It is one of the constants of our jobs, right? Couldn't get away from it if we wanted to. So tell us a little bit about your talk. I think you're kind of build it around three topics relevant within the security area for you and your work.
Yeah, so at RSA conference, Akamai released 3 major threat reports. One was on DNS related traffic insights. We have a massive recursive DNS inspection platform that we operate. And kind of tying into that a little bit is a ransomware threat report as well. So what's happening inside of the network? What are the threats targeting? How are they getting in? what's the threat vectors there, and then also a web application and API report, really looking at as far as what comes from the web, what's attacking our client base, doing an analysis around that, significant changes, and some interesting findings as well.
Excellent. I'm sad I didn't get to hear your talk. I had a talk on API security myself. Maybe I could have used that report, but I'll get to next time. No, it's one of the great things about Akamai. I love the data that you produce because you obviously see so much traffic and you share with us what's happening. Well, what of those do you want to dive into? You want to talk about ransomware? You want to talk about, I'd love to talk about API security. We can talk about any of it that you want.
Yeah, let's start off with API security. It's a great passion of mine. Prior to the pandemic, I spoke at TourCon in San Diego, and the talk was actually titled, APIs are not just a developer's mullet, but how you're getting owned. And the whole mullet analogy kind of came to me. I was like, APIs, this very clean, concise language to operate, small requests, typically coming from mobile devices, is kind of where we see it the most popular. But on the front end, it's all very clean. But on the back end, it branches out and spreads out and talks to all the other application infrastructure that you have, internally, right? Mm-hmm. So therefore, I called it the mullet. And I had a reference to the Kentucky waterfall and Mississippi neck broom, all these great mullet analogies. But what's interesting about APIs is, if you look at Google Trends and as far as search results for things like SOAP and some of the other aging technologies versus open APIs, microservices, et cetera, you'll see a sharp increase starting in 2007. And surprisingly enough, maybe not surprisingly, the release of the iPhone kind of ushered in this new age of APIs, right? There's an app for that. Everything has this application front end now. And a lot of what we're seeing in terms of exploitation are attackers following those trends. A while back, we released a report on credential abuse. And those, 4 out of 5 times are attacking mobile APIs, the API, endpoints for mobile, for the mobile services, because they're not as regularly protected. The inspection doesn't take place the same way, et cetera. But what we noticed in the past, 12, 18 months, we saw just in 2022 alone, we've seen 9 billion attacks already. And this is huge, right? So these numbers obviously continue to grow. It's obviously grown since RSA. But one of the interesting things is we saw that application attacks were up 300% year over year. And again, you would imagine, there's all these, move to the cloud initiatives. Everything has a digital transformation wrapper around it, which is pushing more of these things into the available attack surface for attackers. So not only do we see 300% increase in application attacks, but local file inclusion specifically. Obviously, the OWASP top 10. We typically have SQL injection, maybe cross-site scripting, maybe command injection, and then maybe LFI and RFI, remote file inclusion and local file inclusion. But SQL injection has been the top, maybe next to XSS, for quite some time.
Been with us a long time.
We've seen them. Yeah, it's been, I'm talking decades, right? So it was very surprising for us to see that LFI now makes up the most frequently attacked attack vector on our platform, 400% increase year over year. And this is kind of surprising. So you look at maybe the commoditization, maybe a new tool that has commoditized LFI attacks. Obviously, a significant number of this has to do with Spring4 Shell and Log4j. But that was quite surprising for us to see that.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, you mentioned, of course, mobile is a big factor, right? I mean, it's all talking all APIs to the back end. But I think even the pandemic and the move to the cloud, every application is talking APIs to everything. And people ask me, why is this such a big deal? I said, do you ever do that thing where it says connect your Google account or your Facebook account to something else and give it an okay? Yeah, that's an authentication step. But how does it talk to them? Well, that's all APIs. All that stuff the list is going to share about you and share your data with this other shit. Those are all APIs. That's just you, one person doing one thing. So you imagine all of our applications, cloud native and, microservices type apps. And, the world is APIs, to SaaS services, to everything. I'm not surprised at all that kind of an increase. And I would guess it's going to keep, growing, more hockey stick than it maybe is.
Absolutely. Well, the funny thing too is that a lot of what we're seeing here is that the even orchestration of cloud environments takes place via APIs these days, right?
Oh, yeah. The whole stack is APIs that we work.
Yeah, and so we saw 38% of these attacks were going to the commerce vertical, which might make sense, right? Commerce is basically where all the fun stuff is happening in terms of, new innovation, and you've got all these eyeballs being brought to these pages via marketing campaigns, et cetera. And to me, it's probably not surprising that this is one of the most attacked verticals, but the technology vertical has also seen the most growth over all of them in 2022 so far. So, between technology and commerce, we're going to see some interesting things by the end of the year, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's the saying? Follow the money, right? Well, guess who also does that? The attackers, of course, right? They're right there.
Absolutely.
Well, we could take the whole conversation and dive into this, but I want to hear some more about the ransomware as a service. Tell us some more.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Conti made a bunch of news. This was a ransomware gang. Ransomware as a service is not necessarily new, but we're seeing a lot of innovation in terms of how the attackers are, again, making it easier for others to carry out campaigns. So during the start of the pandemic, we released some reports that talked about just a shift in some tactics in terms of maybe phishing or targeted attacks that were using COVID vaccination as a lure. Anytime there's ransomware or phishing campaigns, you're going to see this follow popular trends, right? I did a talk one time in Chicago for government sector, and I said, raise your hand if you got an email that said your Amazon delivery is delayed. How many of you would potentially click on that email? And like 60% of them was like, yeah, I do have an Amazon delivery. Almost everybody does, ever so often. So that as a lure has been very popular. But what's interesting is that 60% of the successful Conti attacks were carried out on US-based companies. So this goes to show that, where the money is. A lot of the most popular brands, many of the most popular brands originate in the US, and therefore they're headquartered here as well. But 30% of successful attacks from Conti also occurred in the EU. So, a little bit of a balance there, and the rest was kind of commingled amongst other organizations. But I think what was interesting specifically about who is being targeted is that there seems to be this maybe kind of a Goldilocks range of businesses worth $10 to $250 million. And why that's interesting, you look at, small to medium business is because, hey, they might have the money to pay a ransom, but they certainly don't want to negatively affect their brand. They don't have the same legal teams, et cetera.
Or security teams, they're expected to operate like an enterprise, but oftentimes they don't have the full infrastructure and complement of people to do that.
Absolutely. I have a friend that owns a nationwide construction business, and he's like, yeah, I'm kind of the IT and security guy for the company. I was like, you should probably get hiring someone pretty quickly.
Some extra help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Too late.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, let's turn our attention to the DNS attacks side of this third leg of the stool that you talked about.
Yeah. So obviously DNS is super important on the internet, right? You wouldn't know how to get anywhere if DNS wasn't available. But what's also interesting is from a threat perspective, if you start to look at the idea of using recursive DNS to inspect traffic, right? Normally, when anything you do on your computer, it makes a request out to the internet via DNS to find that service. That's normally seen as benign traffic, which I think is kind of interesting. Obviously, over the years, there have been some organizations that have kind of focused in on this, but we've been doing this for quite some time now. We see and analyze about 7 trillion DNS requests a day, which is obviously a pretty large number, and that customer base is always growing. But what we're trying to analyze is, are these requests going to some place that we've seen before? Is it previously been associated to malicious malware payload downloads or phishing campaign sites, et cetera? And then apply that information to a response, right? Maybe you get a friendly fail whale page, maybe you get a redirection, something to that effect. And this has allowed us really to get some interesting insights on phishing attacks, botnets, how they operate. In fact, one scary stat that I was quite surprised about. 1 out of every 10 devices monitored communicated at least once to a malware or ransomware or phishing or command and control domain. Now, it seems like a broad spread, but that also really indicates that, just from a threat perspective, there's always something going on, at least a 10% chance within your environment that something malicious might be taking place, right?
That was my DNS attack monitor going off there. My dog. So,
yeah, alert.
In a way, it's almost like looking at the what's trending on whatever social media platform or Google, or you can look at DNS and traffic and start to see some trends in terms of what kind of attacks, what type of traffic, where it's going, where it's.
Absolutely, yeah. What's interesting is out of the phishing traffic. Most of the victims were targeted by abuse campaigns that either mimic technology, amounting to about 31% of the phishing campaigns, or mimicked financial brands at 32% of the campaigns that we saw. So when you look at that, it's like, listen, you're either going to maybe a social media site. And how easy would it be for me to interject a man-in-the-middle fake login page? Sure, it might send the request on your behalf, but it's going to siphon off those credentials. And of course, if this is happening from a banking perspective, that could be pretty bad as well. We saw a lot of interesting findings too when we start to look at how phishing and maybe lure pages and things like that work when bypassing MFA technology. That kind of attack. The attacks on Twitter last year were kind of a good indication of the fact that it's not impossible. It may be a little bit more difficult, but with a blend of a phishing or a mimic site, man-in-the-middle site, poor technology when it comes to how you're cryptographically connecting your MFA components, and a little bit of social engineering. This stuff can take place a lot more easily than we think.
Yeah, it's not 100%. That's for sure.
Yeah,
it can be compromised. Well, this is fantastic. I wish I could, as I mentioned, could have gone to your talk. But it sounds like it can at least get the paper or all 3 papers. So if you'll leave behind some URLs, I'll make sure we include that in our description and give everybody a chance to download those reports. And super fascinating, Tony. Well, I appreciate you coming by. You should come back again, and we'll take any of those 3 topics, and we could spend lots of time.
My pleasure. Yeah, I've done research in a lot of these different areas. It's really a passion of mine, and luckily I get to do it for a job as well. So it works out for me.
Yeah, don't work a day in your life when work is your passion, right? Well, maybe you do work, but all right.
Sometimes, yeah.
Something like that. Well, Tony Laro from Akamai, appreciate you stopping in with us today. And as I said, you're always welcome back. Come back anytime.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Have a good one.
You bet.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
This is TechstrongTV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Josh Jennings, who's Chief Engineer for SUSE. We're going to be talking about open source software security. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be here.
This issue's been around forever, but it seems like it's getting a whole lot more attention these days. And I think more folks are discovering the need for scanning and composition analysis tools as a result. But I don't know if everybody understands what makes one tool different from another. And for that matter, why is it so challenging to get people to use these things?
There's been a big shift in how open source software is used, and so I think as we've shifted to more package managers, which allow you to easily pull in open source components, it's been really easy to pull in all this data and obviously pull in all these components and build your software on them. But tools haven't really kept up, at least in my opinion. There's a lot of legacy tools out there that are used to pull in, or to scan for old DLLs and jars. And we really moved away from that to modern development practices. So tools like SUSE allow you to expose your open source risk and look at those package managers, look at all the data that you're pulling through them, and give you really great results based on how vulnerable your software is, what your license risk is, what your open source risk is.
A lot of developers will complain about false positives that get generated and they wind up chasing their tail a little bit. So how do we kind of minimize that?
False positives are definitely challenging. I think again, with the shift towards package managers and just better version data coming through sources like the National Vulnerability Database, we're able to match up with the actual vulnerable versions easier. And it still does take some, in some cases, it takes some manual review to determine whether you're still vulnerable. But again, there's a lot better data now. It's easier to match up what component is used where, and really narrow in on which components are used.
Developers will also complain about how long the scans take, and I wonder if sometimes if they're their own worst enemies, because it seems like they postpone the scan and then to the end of the week, and then you got this massive amount of code that you're supposed to scan. So there are best practices or ways of thinking about this differently.
Yeah, absolutely. We recommend you scan with every commit, and we've built our system to be incredibly fast and to be able to scan very quickly, often, in a minute or less. Obviously, it depends on the size of your code base and whether you have a mono repo or lots of little microservices. But we really have designed our system so that you can scan with every commit. And if there's no changes to your manifest files, then we can easily detect that. And we know that, there's no new vulnerabilities that have come in. There's no new packages that have come in. And so we can even make that faster in many cases. So I would say there are tools out there that do not take a long time to commit. They're incredibly easy to integrate. Like SUSE, we have lots of CI/CD integrations. It's really easy to get up and running within minutes. So there's no excuse to not be scanning your software every time you make a change.
Do you think that there's a lot more conversation these days about DevSecOps in general, but is that helping the case? And does it matter how well the tool kind of integrates within those workflows? Because a lot of times you see people want to work within the CLI and they want to work within the CI/CD platform. So do different tools work better in some cases than others in that regard?
Yeah, I think absolutely. There's a lot of tools out there that will give you sort of a generic option to run them. They'll give you some script arguments to run. You can get those to work. At SUSE, we've really tailored to individual CI/CD systems. We have an underlying, infrastructure to scan and to pick up on manifest files, but we've really tailored it to individual CI/CD systems so that, again, you can get up and running very quickly within minutes. And there's obviously lots of different ways that people want to run this. So you could run it locally. You could run a script locally against your local development. Maybe you don't have a CI/CD system because you're a small shop. Absolutely, you can do that. And we've really tried to tailor towards what your development practice is.
How smart can all this stuff get eventually? We hear a lot about AI these days. Do you think AI will be applied to composition analysis and security vulnerability discovery? And what will it look like?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we actually are expecting to be issued a patent here shortly, or we have been issued a patent from the U.S. Patent Office for malicious software detection that will be running. We're actually running it already in the application to detect instances where open source components are compromised. And we've seen a lot of those recently. So that's one area that I absolutely see AI coming in, obviously already happening. And I think there are some others as well. I think we'll see more in the space. To get back to your sort of earlier question about how you detect usage within of a certain vulnerable component within your code base, I think we'll see more along those lines as well.
Do you think that enterprise IT organizations need to do more to contribute to the security of the open source software? There's an argument. I mean, the Linux guys, they have hundreds of folks who look at this stuff, but there's a lot of smaller packages. Log4j comes to mind, where it's just a handful of folks. So do we need to kind of marshal our resources as an industry and kind of figure out how we're going to secure these open source packages in a more cohesive and collective approach?
Yeah, I think that would be amazing. And, obviously open source has changed the way that we develop software. And, we're, for the most part, using it for free. And so any time that companies can give back and share some of their development resources to help maintain these open source packages, it really is fantastic and should be happening more. And I think there needs to be more, and this is something that SUSE has tried to do on the governance front as well. So, as an organization, how well maintained a specific piece of open source software is. Is there one person working on it, maintaining it, or is there a decent sized team? And looking at some of those other metrics that really speak towards maintainability and code health. So yes, we should do more as an industry, and also people should be thinking beyond vulnerabilities and sort of beyond license issues into what the overall health of these open source components are.
I think a lot of organizations don't really have a method for doing that. So maybe we need some best practices in that regard, because what I see is somebody will download a piece of code and now they've created a new branch of something, but they don't send that branch or that update back to be put part of the mainstream project, or at least asked to be part of that. And so now we wind up with all these kind of slightly branches, half forks kind of things. So, is it really a process issue more than a technology issue at this day?
Yeah, I think absolutely. A lot of organizations have open source policies for contributing, spending a specific amount of time, and even, starting to outline some of those processes around if you make a change to a piece of open source code and create a branch, how you should follow through with that and get that submitted, as a pull request to the maintainers. So I think a lot of it, as you said, is process, and it's just something companies need to start to put in place.
What do you think will be the ultimate relationship between DevOps teams and security teams going forward? Do they need to work more collaboratively together, or is it just a matter of getting out of each other's way and kind of finding a way to reduce the friction while we make more secure code faster?
I think there really is a need for more collaboration, and I think a lot of that is through tools. Getting the DevSecOps teams visibility into what's coming into the code base earlier is a great way to catch these things early and to deal with them before they go out into production. So I think, again, tools like SUSE do a great job of doing that, because we give various teams views into what they would like to see as far as what's coming into the code base and being able to action on that. So I think absolutely there'll be more collaboration. There needs to be more collaboration, but then they also do have their own areas of expertise. So the DevSecOps teams have their pieces that they're running, looking at production issues, running external scans, and that's more on their side. So it's sort of a mixture of both. But I do think there is, and we've seen a need for more collaboration there.
So what's your best advice to folks right now as you kind of look at the landscape and there's more awareness of the issue, but how do I get started? What should I be doing? And beyond just delivering the standard DevSecOps sermon, what's the thing that I should be doing tomorrow to move this ball forward?
Sure. Run something. You need to be looking at your open source components at a minimum. Almost every time someone goes and runs their first scan, they'll find that they actually do have vulnerable components or out-of-date components. If they're looking more deeply, there's the whole licensing piece. A lot of people are really surprised when they start digging into that. That's sort of where I came up with the idea for SUSE originally, which was as part of an M&A process, realizing, oh, wow, we have a bunch of licenses that, maybe we shouldn't be using that software. So I think, again, run something and start to get this into your process, and, just be aware of the fact that there's a lot you can do and you should be doing, and it's not as hard as people think it is.
All right. Hey, Josh, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, you heard it here first. Do something, make an effort, because it's not going to solve itself by itself for sure. Guys, back to you in the studio.
This is TechstrongTV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with James Brewer, who's CEO for Swimlane, they're a provider of a SOAR platform in the land of security. They just raised $70 million. And we're going to be talking about what is the state of automation in the land of cybersecurity. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
70 million sounds like quite a lot. So what's the plan for that? I'm sure you maybe bought everybody a virtual beer, but at this point, what's the top of the agenda for you guys?
I think the reason for the fundraising is that we're on a pretty rapid growth trajectory currently. We want to continue at that growth. We hadn't spent a ton of money on sales and marketing. Most of our activity has been in development. We're now transitioning to going more aggressive on our go-to-market, and thus we want to raise capital and enough that could get us to a break-even position. That's effectively the reason.
We've been talking about SOAR for some time now. There's a lot of choices out there. What do you think is the challenge organizations have with automating security in the first place?
Well, believe it or not, I don't even use the word SOAR. I think SOAR kind of denotes a very small portion of the overall security landscape in a way. Clearly, SOAR is important in terms of it basically denoting the Security Operations Center, the SOC. And that's generally where SOAR technologies begin to get adopted. But for Swimlane, I think that's one of the things that separates us from the competition is we go beyond the SOC or beyond what the classic definition of SOAR is. And we really look to new applications outside of the SOC for our growth.
What kinds of applications are those, do you think?
Oh, man, there's quite a few. You know, the traditional SOC applications are still the bedrock. That's kind of our entry point. But if you look outside of it, we're looking to our customers. We're seeing a multitude of different places that we're getting interaction, whether it be in the fraud team, compliance team, the dev team, a multitude of areas where we see an opportunity to get broader and help bring automation to the broader security context.
We hear a lot about DevSecOps these days, and it gets a little tough sometimes for developers to wrap their heads around that. And a lot of people are wondering, to what degree can we shift that left, or should we be relying more on automation and less on the developers who are never going to understand cybersecurity in the first place?
Very good question. I mean, initially, SOAR has been traditionally a technology that's somewhat complex. It does require a level of expertise to implement these workflows or playbooks, and that has kind of held the market back. One thing that we did a long time ago is develop a low-code framework that allows, if it's DevOps, SecOps folks, to begin to visualize and become builders in their own way, where they can articulate a workflow or a playbook on their own and execute it leveraging low-code tools, where in the past that was not able or available.
What level of development expertise do I have to have if I'm a cybersecurity professional to use low-code tools? I mean, can I just be a mere mortal, or are these more like powerful end users, or where are they in that spectrum?
I would say historically, we saw a lot of folks that had like Python experience. And you had to be that level to really be able to garner the value out of an automation platform. I think if you look today, at least for Swimlane, you don't have to have programming experience. It's more of a drag and drop, kind of a very intuitive technology that allows you, the SecOps analyst, to visualize and execute a playbook that would not require programming.
Do you think that the bad guys are automating maybe faster than the good guys, and are we involved in a cybersecurity automation arms race, essentially?
There's no question. I mean, at the end of the day, the value automation provides is that you can't get enough work done with humans. You're fighting bots. And the proliferation of bots are so much that you have to automate. There's not enough time in the day. There's not enough money you could spend with humans to protect against bots effectively.
So why don't you think people automate? Is it just too hard at the moment and that's been the issue, or are they reluctant to put their human knowledge inside of a platform? I mean, is this a career threatening issue in people's minds, or is it just that it's too hard?
I don't think it's career threatening. The folks that we talk to, the customers I talk to, all see value in automation. They know they've got to do it. It's just a matter of, do they have the team and the strategy to implement automation. In my mind, if you're a CISO, that's your first decision. Automation is effectively kind of the data plane, the control plane or the power grid for your security strategy. Everything, all your endpoints, all your technology feed into automation. So if you don't have an automation strategy, it's going to be very hard to protect and defend. So in my mind, it should be the most important. I think there is a sense, though, people understand the power of automation. We're very early in the cycle of automation. I would call it the third inning, to be honest. There's so much more. If you look at the use cases that are being adopted, just go back 2-3 years ago, it was triage. It was, simple use cases. Now it's very advanced, and it's going to expand even more broadly over the next 24 months.
What do you wish most organizations knew or appreciated about automation going in when you first meet them? What's the one thing you kind of see folks doing over and over again that you wish they were a little further down the road on?
I think the recognition of the value automation can provide in terms of protection and compliance. There's even small companies, even Swimlane has 200 disparate security technologies. It's overwhelming. And I know that as a CISO or a manager of any kind of enterprise, if you only knew how valuable an automation strategy could be to ensuring protection, I think you'd want to investigate a lot more thoroughly. And now where the direction of automation is headed, it can be deployed, used from a broad set of folks within the entire security organization. It doesn't have to be that, developer in the SOC or in DevOps that takes a long time. It's scary. It's hard to use. It's really matured a lot, not only in the industry, but for Swimlane specifically. We spent a ton of time on usability and simplicity to make it easy to use and deploy.
All right. So we have nothing to fear but automation itself, as it were. Hey, James, thanks for being on the show.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, guys. And back to you in the studio.
All right. Hey, we hope you enjoyed the show. That's a wrap for 7-Eleven. Pay the pass line, don't pay the com. We'll see you tomorrow with some nice, new, fresh content here on TechstrongTV. Until then, this is Alan Schimmel, hoping you stay safe, well, and strong. Tech Strong. Bye-bye.